Chapter 1263. In the blink of an eye, Chu Xiu had killed one of them. The remaining two Sanskrit sect cultivators were dumbfounded. At the next moment, the two of them saw Chu Xiu's face clearly, and they cried out in surprise, "Chu Xiu!" They never expected that Chu Xiu and the heavenly Luo treasure Rakshasa, two completely unrelated fellows, would be together. The remaining two did not hesitate at all and immediately used their fastest speed to escape. Unfortunately for them, Shang Tianliang had already caught up to them and unleashed his withering glory domain. Chu Xiu easily killed Shang Tianliang in just a few moves. Two half-step martial immortals fighting two profound understanding cultivators were basically bullying them. After burning the three corpses to ashes, Chu Xiu tossed the token and soul crystal of one of the corpses to Fa Ming. Fa Ming was stunned for a moment before he hurriedly said, "No, no, no. Benefactor Chu, you were the one who killed them. How can this poor monk take their things?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Master Fa Ming, there's no need to stand on ceremony. This is according to our previous rules. Although I killed them, if it weren't for Master Fa Ming acting as bait, I wouldn't have been able to kill them. Acting as bait is also risky. It doesn't count as a favor, but according to the rules, Master Fa Ming, you should also take a share." Hearing Chu Xiu's words, Master Fa Ming thought to himself, Benefactor Chu is really an upright person. If it were someone else, even if Master Fa Ming asked for it, the other party would probably refuse to give it to him because he didn't participate in the battle. In that case, it would be disrespectful for this poor monk to refuse. After receiving the token and soul crystal, Fa Ming's favorable impression of Chu Xiu deepened. An hour after the two of them left, several Sanskrit sect cultivators came to check on the situation. When they saw the marks on the ground, their expressions changed. It was like this again. In less than an hour, the team of three had been completely annihilated. If it had been a fierce battle, they would have been able to understand, but this had happened twice in a row. They felt that something was wrong, so they immediately went back to report to Singaluo. When Chu Xiu and Fa Ming returned with the token and the soul crystal, the monks of the Heaven Luo Temple immediately changed their attitude towards Chu Xiu. Previously, they did have some doubts about Chu Xiu. Of course, this was not too malicious. It was just that the monks of the Heavenly Luo Treasure Temple looked at everyone with some arrogance, except for the people of the Three Pristines Temple. Although they appeared to be very modest, deep down, they were very arrogant. But now that Chu Xiu had proven that he indeed had the strength to solve the current predicament of the Heavenly Luo Treasure Temple, this group of monks would not be so insensible as to make things difficult for Chu Xiu. After killing a group of people from the Sanskrit sect, Chu Xiu did not continue to attack. People had just died, and the people from the Sanskrit sect would definitely gather in a very dense area. If they attacked again, they would be easily discovered. So on the second day, Chu Xiu continued to attack. For 3 days in a row, 9 heaven and earth mysterious realm experts from the Sanskrit sect were killed. The number of people who died was as many as the Heavenly Luo Treasure Temple. The Sanskrit sect finally felt that something was wrong. It should be said that they had already felt that something was wrong, but they could not find anything. This time, Singaluo immediately began to gather people to investigate, which led to Chu Xiu returning empty-handed on the 4th day. When he went out again on the 5th day, it was the same. Fa Ming took the initiative to look for Chu Xiu and the others. He shook his head and said, "Almsgiver Chu, let's go back. It should be useless. So many people from the Sanskrit sect have died. According to senior brother, they will definitely notice something. Singaluo is not a stupid person, he should have already called back all his people." Chu Xiu nodded. It was enough to weaken the Sanskrit sect to this extent. The rest would be up to the people on both sides to deal with. However, right at this moment, Chu Xiu sensed a familiar fluctuation, causing him to immediately look in a certain direction. The next moment, Shang Tianliang also looked in that direction. He was a little surprised and said, "It's the aura of the Red Lotus karmic fire. That little girl Mei Qinglian has already entered the heaven and earth mysterious realm?" That was fast. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "There are 2 more waves of Qi blood force. One should be an extreme power, and the other is much more complicated. It should be Brother Lu and Old Lu." More than half a month had passed in Zhongzhou, and almost everyone had arrived at the center of Zhongzhou. It was not strange to see Lu Fengxian and the others now. It was just that the waves from the battle were a little big. Did they encounter demonic ghosts or other enemies? At this time, in a small valley in the west, Lu Fengxian, Lu Jianghu, and Mei Qinglian were surrounded and attacked by 6 heaven and earth mysterious realm warriors. Although the other party had twice the number of people, the 3 of them cooperated well and did not lose. Among them, Lu Jianghu was already at the peak of the heaven and earth mysterious realm, and the blood demon divine art was extremely strange and unpredictable. As long as he was not fatally injured, he would basically be able to recover. So, Lu Jianghu directly took on the attacks of several people, as if he was not afraid of death. His confidence came from Lu Fengxian and Mei Qinglian. Lu Fengxian's strength was so strong that few warriors of the same level could match up to her. As long as Lu Jianghu could entangle someone, Lu Fengxian could swing her halberd, the other party would definitely suffer. Mei Qinglian had only entered the heaven and earth mysterious realm after entering Zhongzhou. She did not have the foundation of Lu Jianghu, so naturally she could not reach the peak of the heaven and earth mysterious realm. However, the Red Lotus Hellfire was extremely strange. Even in the Daoist, it was an extremely strange martial art power. With Lu Jianghu and Lu Fengxian as the main attackers, and her sneak attack with the Red Lotus Hellfire, from the back, it was difficult to guard against. The 2 people who surrounded Lu Fengxian and the others were not strangers, but the 2 leading them were Su Jiang and Chen Jiulong. Ever since Su Jiang and Chen Jiulong escaped last time, both of them had been seriously injured by Chu Xiu. Fortunately, their bloodlines were quite rich. They had spent a lot of resources and spent a few days to recuperate. The 2 of them were loyal to each other. They did not run away immediately, but went back to check on Yuan Fu. Although they knew that Yuan Fu was basically dead, they would at least feel better if they went back to check on him. As expected, when they saw Yuan Fu's body, their hearts turned cold. They did not dare to cause trouble for Chu Xiu, and went straight to the hinterland of Zhongzhou. Originally, they did not want to cause trouble for Lu Fengxian and the others. Although they hated Chu Xiu, they did not know Chu Xiu at all. They only knew that he was the successor of Gu Zun and the commandery governor of Royal Sky Pavilion in the eastern region. But they happened to see Xianyuan Wushuang from the east region, LV Fengxian and some people from other sects, fighting for the soul crystals of several high-level demonic ghosts. From Xianyuan Wushuang's unintentional conversation, they learned the identity of Lu Fengxian and the others. There were several rogue cultivators present, all of whom came from small sects, but they had some relationship with the 2 families. Moreover, 2 warriors from the sword sect were also present. Putting aside the grudges between the southern region and the eastern region, the World Sword sect had a good relationship with Yuan Fu's sword Venerable Ling Tian's lineage. In fact, sword Venerable Ling Tian's lineage had once instructed the World Sword sect to take care of Yuan Fu. Now that Yuan Fu was gone, how were they supposed to take care of him? Therefore, Su Jiang and Chen Jiulong immediately joined hands with the 2 from the sword sect and 2 rogue cultivators from the southern territory to attack Lu Fengxian and the others. At this time, not far away from them, Xianyuan Wushuang and several warriors from the High Heaven sect were watching the show with a sneer. It should be said that he seemed to have, unintentionally, directed this show. In fact, he didn't know Su Jiang and Chen Jiulong, but he knew Yuan Fu. When he heard Chen Jiulong and Su Jiang say that Yuan Fu was killed by Chu Xiu and that they were also seriously injured by Chu Xiu, he inadvertently revealed the relationship between them and Chu Xiu in the conversation with Lu Fengxian and the others. Chen Jiulong and Su Jiang were a little afraid of Chu Xiu. Normally, even if they knew the relationship between Lu Fengxian and Chu Xiu, they would not dare to fight. But Xianyuan Wushuang was sure that once the two sides had a conflict, they would definitely fight because Lu Jianghe was there. Among the group of people under Chu Xiu, apart from Lu Fengxian, who had defeated him, Xianyuan Wushuang was most impressed by Lu Jianghe. This man had a foul mouth. Basically, if you said a few words to him, he would want to chop you to death. And what happened next was really like that. Chen Jiolong and Su Jiang argued with him for a few words, and then they were enraged by Lu Jianghe's sarcasm. They directly joined hands with the sword sect under the heavens and fought fiercely with Lu Fengxian and the others. At this time, the warriors of the High Heaven sect standing behind Xianyuan Wushuang couldn't help but say, "Wushuang, let's fight. Chu Xiu belongs to the East Domain like us, and he has saved the sect master's life. We can't just watch his people be besieged here, can we?" The person who spoke was an elder of the High Heaven sect. With his shrewdness, he had already realized that Xianyuan Wushuang seemed to have deliberately revealed the relationship between Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian and the others. But it was too late by the time he realized it, and Xianyuan Wushuang didn't blatantly provoke them. Even Lu Jianghe and the others couldn't react in time. Xianyuan Wushuang said coldly, "Elder Wu, don't forget where we are. This is the central province. The Daluo Divine Palace only has 6 places. It can be said that everyone is an enemy except for our High Heaven sect. What will we do if we waste our energy to save them? Chu Xiu only saved sect master once, does that mean our entire High Heaven sect has to sell our lives for him?" Hearing Xianyuan Wushuang's words, Elder Wu's eyes were filled with disappointment. He had watched Xianyuan Wushuang grow up. Xianyuan Wushuang had been arrogant before, so he didn't think it was a big deal. If one wasn't frivolous, how could one be called a young man if he wasn't aggressive? But now, Xianyuan Wushuang wasn't just frivolous. He didn't dare to fight head-on and only knew how to plot in secret. Was such a person really suitable to be the successor of the High Heaven sect in the future? Chapter 1264. It was 6 against 2, yet they were still unable to take down their opponents. This caused a sliver of fury to appear in Su Jiang and Chen Jiolong's eyes. They felt somewhat humiliated, so their attacks became even more ferocious. Lu Jianghe was scurrying around like a rat as he yelled at Lu Fengxian and Mei Qinglian, "Can't you two put in a little more effort and kill one of them first? I won't be able to hold on much longer if this goes on." Mei Qinglian snapped, "You still have the nerve to say that? If it wasn't for your foul mouth, we wouldn't have been surrounded by them." Lu Jianghe said righteously, "How can you blame me for that? They were the ones who insulted Chu Xiu first, and I couldn't take it anymore. Cult Master Chu is the face of our holy faith. You can insult me, but you can't insult him." "Oh? Why didn't I know you were so loyal?" The moment they heard this voice, Lu Fengxian and the other two immediately revealed a hint of joy on their faces. On the other hand, Su Jiang and Chen Jiolong's expressions changed abruptly, and they hurriedly pulled their people back. Chu Xiu and Shang Tianliang landed from the sky, followed by Fa Ming. Chu Xiu looked at Su Jiang and Chen Jiolong and said coldly, "You two really don't know what's good for you. What, do you still want to accompany Yuan Fu after he's dead?" Chen Jiolong and Su Jiang's expressions turned ugly when they heard that, but they didn't dare to retort. Their eyes were filled with fear, and Chen Jiolong was even ready to unleash his blood qi to escape at any time. They were really scared of Chu Xiu in the last battle. It was an absolute suppression of power. No matter what methods they used or what trump cards they had, they were all powerless in the hands of their opponent and were easily crushed. It was a terrible feeling that filled them with despair. Facing Chu Xiu again, they didn't even have the courage to argue with Chu Xiu. Although the two primeval sovereign heirs weren't weak, they were lacking in terms of mental cultivation. Chu Xiu had frightened them out of their wits in just one battle. It was no wonder why their master had sent them to participate in the Exalted Divine Palace's competition. It was probably to temper their mental state. There were also some independent cultivators who weren't fighting and were only spectators. Seeing how Chu Xiu had subdued the situation the moment he appeared, to the point where Su Jiang and Chen Jiulong did not even dare to say anything, everyone revealed astonished expressions. They did not know who he was. Only a few southern region cultivators who had heard the news that Chu Xiu had joined forces with Celestial Demon Palace to destroy Bliss Demon Palace discussed cautiously. Xianyuan Wushuang clenched his fists and gritted his teeth. His eyes were filled with jealousy, and his heart was filled with jealousy. This feeling had never appeared in Xianyuan Wushuang's heart before. For Xianyuan Wushuang, he had always been the target of others' jealousy. He was the one who stood in the center of the crowd and was looked up to by everyone. It could only be him. But now, that person had become Chu Xiu. Uncontrollable jealousy had sprouted in his heart. Perhaps even he wasn't aware of it. At this moment, Su Jiang and Chen Jiulong were about to escape, but the two cultivators from the sword sect stepped forward at the same time. Chen Jiulong couldn't hold them back even if he wanted to. Yu Wenfu was killed by you? Chu Xiu said indifferently, so what if I was? Do you want to avenge him? One of them shook his head and said, avenge? He isn't from the sword sect, so we naturally don't need to avenge him. However, swordsman Ling Tian's lineage has a deep relationship with the sword sect, and he entrusted us to take care of him. In the end, he died in your hands. This is our fault. This is karma. We aren't taking revenge, but we just want to get back the karma. Chen Jiulong and Su Jiang looked anxious at the back. They wanted to say something, but they didn't dare to say it in front of Chu Xiu. They didn't even dare to send a voice transmission as they were afraid that Chu Xiu would notice them again. The two cultivators from the sword sect were not weak, but they didn't know what kind of monster they were up against. You want to get back the karma with your little strength? I'm afraid you won't have the chance to come back. Karma? With just you guys? Chu Xiu's face revealed a smile that was not a smile. And the swords in our hands. As soon as he spoke, the two cultivators from the sword sect charged at Chu Xiu directly. The sword energy in their hands exploded and the sword essence soared into the sky with terrifying power. Lu Fengxian wanted to help out subconsciously, but she was stopped by Lu Jianghe. Calm down. Do you think that Chu Xiu needs help to deal with these two guys? Let me teach you a lesson. When your superior needs to be in the limelight, you better not interfere. Just be in charge of shouting, "Sect leader is mighty." This way, you will have a future. Mei Qinglian suddenly said, so, this is the reason why you were imprisoned by Patriarch Dugu for 500 years? You flattered the horse's leg? Lu Jianghe's face instantly darkened, humph. I won't argue with a woman. Red Lotus Demon Lord's mouth wasn't as vicious as yours back then. You won't even have a place among the 4 demon lords in the future. Mei Qinglian looked indifferent, the demon lords aren't up to you to decide. While the few of them were bickering, Chu Xiu had already ended the battle. He didn't know where the people from Sanskrit were and Chu Xiu didn't want to waste any more time here. Therefore, at the moment when the two of them attacked, Chu Xiu used the law embodiment of heaven and earth. In an instant, a powerful force was absorbed into Chu Xiu's body. His body towered into the clouds and he even pushed against the formation of the central continent. As the punch landed, the swords were shattered and the two cultivators from the sword sect were sent flying. They spat out a mouthful of blood at the same time. Magic! Those martial artists who hadn't seen Chu Xiu in action before had a change in their expressions, and they looked extremely shocked. Although magic didn't mean that he was a martial immortal, in the minds of ordinary people, only martial immortals could use magic. And now that Chu Xiu had unleashed his divine ability, they felt that there was not much of a difference between Chu Xiu and a martial immortal. Chen Jiulong pulled Su Jiang and was ready to escape. He didn't doubt Chu Xiu's determination to kill them. Yu Wenfu had already died in his hands. Would he still care about the backer behind them? Just when they were scared to the point of wanting to escape, a scorching sword light flew over from the horizon like a fire dragon, accompanied by the cry of a sword, and appeared in front of everyone. It was a cultivator in his 40s who was dressed in red. His red clothes were as red as fire, and the long sword in his hand was emitting a scorching aura. It was like a suppressed volcano in the scabbard and was restless. It's Yan Jifei, the peak leader of the Fire Lotus Sword Peak of the 13 Sword Peaks of the Sword Sect. Chu Xiu lifted his head to take a look at this person. He had heard of this name when he was dealing with the Blissful Demon Palace in the southern region. There were 13 sword peaks in the World Sword Sect, representing the 13 branches of the sword principle of the World Sword Sect. Although it wasn't as many as the dozens of pavilions of Tian Luo Bao Cha and the dozens of divine palaces of Sanskrit, those who were qualified to enter the 13 sword peaks were all at the peak of the profound enlightenment realm and could comprehend the sword principle. If no one could meet the requirements, the peak masters of the 13 sword peaks wouldn't take the position even if it was empty. Looks like the relationship between your World Sword Sect and the High Heaven Sword Sect is quite good. Peak Master, are you also here to avenge him? Yan Jifei shook his head and said, there's no such thing as revenge in the World Sword Sect. We don't need to avenge someone from the High Heaven Sword Sect. I'm just here to take him away. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, you touched my man before and now you want to leave? Do you think it's that easy? Otherwise, what else do you want? You want me to stay here with you? A murderous look flashed in Yan Jifei's eyes. He had a fiery temper and a fiery temper. However, when he entered the central continent this time, Sword Saint Luo Shan had instructed him to put the interests of the sect first. Therefore, this time, he wanted to take the two seriously injured martial artists away. Otherwise, according to his previous character, when he saw his own disciples seriously injured, he would have fought them first and then talked about other things. However, he didn't expect that the other party seemed to want a yard after giving an inch. Since you don't want to leave, then stay. As soon as Chu Xiu's voice fell, the breaking formation in his hand was already unsheathed. Endless sharpness instantly enveloped Yan Jifei. It was ethereal and invisible, but the saber-intent soared into the sky. In the next moment, endless flames rose around Yan Jifei's body. His whole body was like a huge pillar of fire. The raging flames soared into the sky, trying to break through the strangulation of Chu Xiu's ethereal slash. A sonorous sound of weapons clashing could be heard. The pillar of fire broke into several sections, but Yan Jifei's figure rushed straight towards Chu Xiu. His sword momentum was like fire. In the center of the sword, a fire lotus bloomed, destroying everything in front of him in a manner that could burn the heavens and destroy the earth. Half-step martial immortal. The combat power displayed by Yan Jifei had definitely reached the level of a half-step martial immortal. No wonder he dared to stand up and challenge Chu Xiu at this time. However, at this moment, as Chu Xiu's hand was pinched, the Great Compassion Mantra was displayed, and the air was torn apart. A huge demon tore through the void and pulled towards Yan Jifei, forcing him to change the direction of his sword momentum. The fire lotus bloomed, and the demon was torn into pieces. In that instant, Chu Xiu's breaking formation slashed out several times in succession. Ethereal slash, saber intent of the breaking word formula, 7 limits, and other saber momentum were unleashed one after another. In an instant, the violent saber light had already shrouded Yan Jifei. Every slash was filled with extreme power. The cold saber light was powerful enough to tear through the void, causing Yan Jifei's expression to suddenly change. He could see that Chu Xiu should also be a half-step martial immortal. Although his strength was strong, he was not a real martial immortal. There should not be much difference between them. In the end, who would have thought that the other party could suppress him to such an extent with just this pure power? Break! Yan Jifei shouted fiercely, and the fiery red lotus bloomed. The red light was like blood, and the red light was like fire. The soaring sword light was like a blooming red lotus, breaking through the obstruction of the saber light. However, in the next moment, Chu Xiu displayed the law phenomenon, and with a punch, he was blasted to the ground again. Chapter 1265. Yan Zhifei's outcome was the same as the other two cultivators from the sword sect. He was sent flying by a punch from Chu Xiu. However, the difference was that he was able to withstand the same punch from the law phenomenon of heaven and earth. He was not heavily injured and could even stand up. Chu Xiu revealed a slightly surprised expression. "You're quite resistant. I didn't expect the cultivators from the sword sect to have such a good physical body cultivation. Very few ordinary profound enlightenment state cultivators, even if they were half-step martial immortals, could withstand the ultimate attack from Chu Xiu's law phenomenon of heaven and earth." Chu Xiu took a step forward and wanted to continue attacking. However, Yan Zhifei took out another small sword and said coldly, "Chu Xiu, do you really want to fight to the end with the sword sect? The Daoist Divine Palace hasn't officially opened and it's still too early for the final battle. If you insist, I'll use the 10,000 converging swords in advance. If worse comes to worst, we'll all die together." The small sword that Yan Zhifei took out looked very ordinary. It was only a foot long with a wooden scabbard and handle. However, when he said the words 10,000 swords converging stream, everyone instinctively retreated at the same time. Their eyes were filled with fear. Chen Jiolong had even used his dragon transformation secret technique and was ready to escape at any time. Although Chu Xiu did not know what it was, judging from the expressions of everyone present, it was clearly not something easy to deal with. It was very dangerous. Chu Xiu said calmly, "Fight to the end? Do you have the right to do so? You can leave if you want. However, the people from the sword sect attacked my people just now. Those who attacked me can leave after breaking one of their arms. Otherwise, all of you can stay here and wait for decades or centuries to become demonic ghosts. If you don't believe me, you can give it a try. Let's see who will die in the end." Shang Tianliang, who was standing at the back, chuckled and said, "Those two brats, stop looking. I'm talking about you, the one who can transform into a long worm. I don't care if you transform into a dragon or a long worm. I let you escape last time. This time, try and see if you can escape from I." Chen Jiolong and Su Zhang's expressions immediately changed. They didn't expect that they would still be noticed by this old thing even though they were so low-key. Yan Zhifei's eyes were filled with anger. For so many years, the World Sword Sect had never suffered such grievances. Given his temper, he wanted to use the 10,000 converging swords to take everyone down with him. However, he wasn't afraid of death. What he was afraid of was that after using the 10,000 converging swords, he would perish together while his opponent would still be alive and well. Turning his head and glancing at the two martial artists who had been severely injured by Chu Xiu, Yan Zhifei said coldly, "What did the sect master tell you before? A swordsman would rather break than bend, but it wasn't that he didn't know how to be flexible. Yuan Fu is dead, not your father. Why are you in such a hurry to get involved? Even if you want to settle the karma, it's not your turn." On the other hand, the two martial art practitioners from the sword sect of the world were extremely straightforward. They exploded their gang energy and shattered their own arms without even making a sound. Yan Zhifei snorted coldly and left with the two of them. Chu Xiu also kept his promise and didn't stop them. However, before he left, Yan Zhifei didn't glare at Chu Xiu angrily. Instead, he looked at Chen Jiolong and Su Jiang deeply. He hated people like them who tried to sow discord the most. Although he didn't see the details of the incident, he knew that the martial artists from the World Sword Sect were straightforward and wouldn't scheme against others in secret. The two martial artists who had joined in the attack must have been instigated by someone. When the two martial artists who had joined in the attack saw this, they didn't care about their pride and decisively crushed one of their arms. They lowered their heads and said, "We were blinded by lard. Please forgive us, official Chu. They were people with status in the southern region. However, at this moment, they were nothing in the central region where experts were gathered. The price of not admitting defeat was death. Even the World Sword sect had admitted defeat. What was the point of being stubborn? The two of them wanted to cry but had no tears. Previously, they had attacked simply because they knew Su Jiang and Chen Jiulong's identity and wanted to curry favor with the two successors of the Prime Venerables. They didn't expect to offend people they couldn't afford to offend. This was great. They had suffered a double loss. Although they could recover from losing an arm in a few days, they were in the central region. Wasting a few days would cost them their lives. Out of the 6 people, 4 admitted defeat. Chen Jiulong gritted his teeth but didn't make a move. The World Sword sect admitted defeat because they didn't want to waste their strength in such an insignificant conflict. Entering the central region, they naturally had to put the interests of their sect first. The 2 rogue martial artists admitted defeat because they had fought their way up from the bottom of the underworld. They could be considered to be adaptable. But what about the 2 of them? They were the successors of the Prime Venerables. Their status was extremely respected. Previously, they were heavily injured by Chu Xiu. In the martial arts lineage, there were strong and weak, and there were winners and losers. Winning and losing were common in the martial arts lineage, so it wasn't embarrassing. Elder Wu was just about to say something when Chu Xiu went straight to Xianyuan Wushuang and reached out to him. Xianyuan Wushuang didn't expect that Chu Xiu would suddenly attack him. Caught off guard, Xianyuan Wushuang didn't even have time to take out halberd. He could only burst out his domain aura qi to resist. But the next moment, Chu Xiu's god domain strangled Xianyuan Wushuang's domain and instantly shattered it. The creation heavenly demon turned into a shadow and merged into Xianyuan Wushuang's shadow. Its power suddenly erupted and tightly bound Xianyuan Wushuang. Chu Xiu directly stretched out his hand, grabbed Xianyuan Wushuang's neck, and lifted him up. He said coldly, "Xianyuan Wushuang. Are you courting death? Or do you really think I don't dare to kill you?" When Su Jiang and Chen Jiulong attacked Lu Fengxian and others, he felt something was wrong. Su Jiang and Chen Jiulong should not know the relationship between Lu Fengxian and him. Chu Xiu's reputation only circulated between the east and south regions. Therefore, in the eyes of most Daoist people, Lu Fengxian and others should belong to the category of nobodies. The only person present who knew Chu Xiu very well and knew a lot about him was one person. To be precise, it should be a group of people, the people of High Heaven sect. Although Chu Xiu was hostile to High Heaven sect before, after he saved Fang Yinglong, his relationship with High Heaven sect became much better. Even many people of High Heaven sect remembered that he owed them a favor, so there was no reason to plot against him at this time. Therefore, after thinking about it, there was no one else but Xianyuan Wushuang. During the fight just now, Chu Xiu had been paying attention to Xianyuan Wushuang. Seeing his expression, Chu Xiu knew that it must be him who did it. Xianyuan Wushuang struggled, but because all his meridians were penetrated by the creation heavenly demon's power, he could not even mobilize his gang qi. "Chu Xiu! How dare you!" Xianyuan Wushuang struggled to spit out these 4 words through his teeth. "Let's see if I dare or not." The cold killing intent in Chu Xiu's eyes was overflowing, and the gang qi in his hands burst out. Even with Xianyuan Wushuang's physical strength, he could not withstand it, and was about to be strangled to death by Chu Xiu. Chapter 1266. Anyone who wasn't blind could see Xianyuan Wushuang's scheme. Even the rest of the High Heaven sect couldn't stand it. However, apart from a veteran deacon elder, Xianyuan Wushuang had the highest status among the High Heaven sect cultivators who entered the central province. Even though he had been punished by Qin Baiyuan to patrol the streets and guard the city walls, Xianyuan Wushuang was still the successor of the High Heaven sect. At this time, seeing that the successor of their High Heaven sect was about to be strangled to death by Chu Xiu, Elder Wu immediately rushed up and begged bitterly, "Senior Chu, this time Xianyuan Wushuang was insensible. He didn't do it on purpose, he just accidentally let it slip. Please forgive him this time. You and I both belong to the East Territory sect. After entering the Central Province, we should help each other. How can we kill each other?" Chu Xiu stopped, looked at Elder Wu and said indifferently, "Misunderstanding? Elder Wu, do you think you're an idiot, or do you think I'm an idiot? Do you really think this is a misunderstanding? Since you also know that I belong to the East Territory, why didn't you help me just now? I, Chu Xiu, have never done anything wrong to the High Heaven sect. I saved Sect Master Fong last time, but I didn't take the initiative to ask for anything in return. I didn't ask for anything from the High Heaven sect, but now you're the ones who schemed against me. Is this how your High Heaven sect shows gratitude?" Elder Wu's face turned red at Chu Xiu's words. In the end, he clenched his teeth and said, "Official Chu, it was indeed my High Heaven sect's fault this time. Please forgive us. Ancestral Master can testify that after this matter, as long as I see Elder Wu, I will immediately inform him of this matter. In the Central Province, Xianyuan Wushuang no longer has the right to make decisions. After the Daoist Divine Palace, regardless of whether Xianyuan Wushuang is dead or not, my High Heaven sect will give official Chu an explanation." Elder Wu's vow wasn't just an ordinary one. He was an elder of High Heaven sect. At this time, swearing on behalf of the entire High Heaven sect was basically betting on the reputation of the entire sect. There were still some outsiders present, as well as people from the Heavenly Seizing Treasured Temple. Elder Wu had already sworn an oath, so even if High Heaven sect wanted to go back on its word in the future and throw him out to atone for his crimes, it would only serve to incur the contempt of others. Chu Xiu tilted his head, glanced at Xianyuan Wushuang, and threw him to the ground. Xianyuan Wushuang struggled to say something, but Elder Wu took out a long sword and pointed it at him, saying coldly, "Xianyuan Wushuang, if you continue to make trouble, I'll kill you first. Dying at my hands is better than dying at the hands of an outsider and causing trouble for my High Heaven sect. How dare you?" Xianyuan Wushuang glared at Elder Wu, as if he couldn't believe that this elder, who had always been a yes-man in front of him, dared to point a weapon at him. Elder Wu replied coldly, "Why not? You are not the only heir of High Heaven sect. If you insist on causing trouble for the sect, I can only kill you first to clean up the sect. I used to be hunted by the big sects in the Eastern Territory, and it was High Heaven sect that saved my life and taught me cultivation methods, allowing me to reach where I am today. Even if you were the sect master, I would still dare to fight you to the death if you did something that harmed the interests of High Heaven sect, let alone a mere heir of a sect." Chu Xiu glanced at Elder Wu in surprise. A big sect like High Heaven sect indeed had a strong foundation. In fact, a person like Elder Wu was what a sect wanted the most. He was also the most deserving pillar of strength. The sect had never been ruled by a single person. Only people like Elder Wu who were not afraid of personal authority and always prioritized the interests of the sect, the longer the sect could develop. It was not without reason that High Heaven sect had been able to firmly hold the title of the top sect in the Eastern Territory for 10,000 years. Watching Elder Wu leave with Xianyuan Wushuang, Shang Tianliang, who was behind Chu Xiu, transmitted his voice in surprise, "You actually let this boy go? This is not your style. With our strength, even if we were to wipe out all of High Heaven sect's members in Great Law Heaven, it would still be possible. No one in High Heaven sect has broken through to the martial immortal realm, and the strongest is only an elder at the half-step martial immortal realm." Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and sent a divine sense transmission, "Don't forget, High Heaven sect still owes me a favor. In this day and age, the one who owes a debt is the boss. If I fall out with them now, wouldn't that be a loss? Also, Monk Fa Ming is standing on the side. We are now cooperating with the Heavenly Luo Temple, so don't go too far." Although I don't know if the monks of the heavenly Luo temple are the same as those in the mortal world, it's better to be careful. But whether Xianyuan Wushuang can leave the Daoist alive is not certain. Don't forget, there are countless dangers in the Daoist, and it's normal for people to die, isn't it? Although Chu Xiu's expression was very calm, Shang Tianliang had been with Chu Xiu for so long that he knew Chu Xiu's character. Since he said this in such a tone, Xianyuan Wushuang's future could already be imagined. Chu Xiu turned his head and said to Monk Fa Ming with a wry smile, "This is a personal grievance between me and some warriors in the East region. Master Fa Ming, please don't laugh at me. In Jianghu, even if you don't provoke others, there will always be others who will provoke you. For the sake of my face and my friends, I can only be tough to the end and can't give in." Monk Fa Ming nodded and said, "This poor monk is aware of this. Just like the heretics of the Sanskrit sect, even if I don't provoke them, they will inevitably cause some trouble. Donor Chu is an outstanding figure in the East region, so it's normal for you to be hated by others." Although Fa Ming also felt that Chu Xiu seemed to have more enemies, he was prejudiced. After all, Chu Xiu had once saved his life. In Fa Ming's view, there must be people who hated Chu Xiu, so they all targeted him in the central province. Especially Xianyuan Wushuang, the jealousy in his heart was very obvious to a Buddhist warrior like Fa Ming. Obviously, this kind of emotion would gradually affect his state of mind. After chatting with Fa Ming for a while, Chu Xiu found Lu Fengxian and the others and asked them about the situation. Lu Jiang he shook his head and said proudly, "You said that the central province is dangerous and that the demonic ghost is easy to deal with. I can't believe my eyes, and I can't believe my perception, so I only believe in the qi and blood that I absorbed. The demonic ghost doesn't have qi and blood, so it can't absorb qi and blood. During this time, I have gained a lot." As he said this, Lu Jiang he directly shook out a big bag of soul crystals. There were dozens of them, but they were not too big. The biggest one was only half a kilogram, the size of a baby's fist. Of course, Lu Jiang he didn't say anything. Although he killed a lot of demonic ghosts, he also encountered many experts from big sects, each of whose aura was so strong that he didn't even have the courage to attack. Therefore, before those people could react, he had already used the blood escape technique and disappeared. Even those people were stunned. Some people didn't have any evil intentions, but when they saw Lu Jiang he use blood escape, they thought that there was something terrible behind him. However, this kind of thing was a bit embarrassing, and it affected his image as the fifth demon lord. After all, the 4 demon lords in front of the Kunlun devil cult wouldn't run at the first sight of an enemy. Don't be careless. A truly powerful demonic ghost can sink into the deepest part of your mind. At that time, even if you don't absorb the power of blood and qi, you will still think that you have absorbed the power of blood and qi. Chu Xiu lectured. Lu Jiang he was still a bit unconvinced, so Chu Xiu directly took out the ghost general's soul crystal. Seeing that it was the size of a human head and over 10 kilograms, Lu Jiang he immediately stopped talking. Chu Xiu looked at Mei Qinglian, a bit surprised. "You have already broken through to the mysterious heaven and earth realm?" Mei Qinglian raised her snow-white neck. "What? You guys broke through long ago, and I only caught up now, is it strange? The power of the demonic ghost's soul crystal is very special. Don't be fooled by their evil power, but the power of their soul crystal is the purest form of primordial spirit energy. After refining it, I combined it with my Qin-Nu technique and the karmic fire of the red lotus to produce a very strange power, and I also took the opportunity to break through." When he heard that Mei Qinglian had refined the soul crystal, he quickly asked, "Then did you get surrounded by demonic ghosts?" Mei Qinglian had a baffled expression on her face. "This place is filled with demonic ghosts. If you take a wrong step, you will step into the territory of the demonic ghosts. You will be besieged at all times. But it doesn't matter, the karmic fire of the red lotus is very effective against demonic ghosts, so I basically didn't get into any trouble." Chu Xiu could roughly guess what was going on. Martial artists who refined soul crystals were easily targeted by demonic ghosts, but it depended on what level of demonic ghost they refined. Chu Xiu had been very lucky to run into a high-rank demonic ghost when he left the sect, so he naturally became the target of the ghost general later on. Moreover, the demonic ghosts that had targeted Mei Qinglian weren't of high rank, so they were nothing more than fodder before the karmic fire of the Red Lotus. Chu Xiu turned his gaze to Lu Fengxian. "Brother Lu, did you encounter any danger during this time?" Lu Fengxian shook his head. "I didn't encounter any major danger. The demonic ghost's power was very interesting, but it couldn't corrode my mind. As for the martial artists that came with me, I didn't encounter anyone too strong, and a few of my friends were very forthright. They sparred with each other for a bit before dispersing and not fighting over it." LV Fengxian took out a dozen tokens and a pile of soul crystals. "Brother Chu, these are what I've accumulated over the past few days. Although it's not a lot, it'll be of great help to you when you enter the exalted divine palace." Lu Jianghu's eyes widened at the sight of the pile of soul crystals. "You didn't raid the demonic ghost's nest, did you?" Lu Fengxian shook his head. "No, I didn't. In fact, I didn't encounter many demonic ghosts. I picked up these soul crystals." "Picked up?" Lu Fengxian nodded. "Yes, I did. When I was looking for a cave to rest in, I found a very weak demonic ghost. After killing it, I found the remains of a senior. There were so many soul crystals in his body. I think he died here by accident. His soul had just assimilated into a demonic ghost when I killed him, so I picked up these soul crystals." Chu Xiu glanced at the head-sized soul crystal in his hand and silently put it away. He didn't say anything else. Chapter 1267. Lu Fengxian's luck this time was so good that it made one's hair stand on end. It was normal for cultivators to die in the center prefecture, but it was unusual for someone to carry so many soul crystals and then die in the center. Anyone who could collect so many soul crystals had to be qualified to participate in the Exalted Divine Palace's final ranking competition, and they shouldn't have fallen until the very last moment. But now, he had died there, and there were only demonic ghosts that he had turned into after he died. There were no other demonic ghosts around, so the most likely possibility was that he had also been killed by the demonic ghosts, but he had perished together with them. Moreover, the timing of Lu Fengxian's arrival had been extremely coincidental. If he had come just a little later, the ghouls would have absorbed the power of the soul crystals and become high-ranking ghouls. At that time, even Lu Fengxian might have been forced to stay alive. Lu Fengxian's luck was enviable. At the very least, it was much better than Chu Xiu's, who'd been plagued by bad luck since entering the center prefecture. But no one was jealous of Lu Fengxian. No matter how good his luck was, what he obtained wasn't for himself. He'd given it to Chu Xiu without reservation. Chu Xiu didn't say much in the way of thanks. There was no need for such words between him and Lu Fengxian. By the way, have any of you seen Old Man Wei? Apart from Wei Shuya, everyone from Chu Xiu's side who'd entered the center prefecture had gathered here. Of course, there was also Chenqing Di, but Shang Tianliang had already seen Chenqing Di. Given the latter's strength, there was no need to worry. Mei Qinglian frowned. "You haven't seen Old Man Wei either?" "It's the same for us." Chu Xiu also frowned when he heard Mei Qinglian and the others say this. Logically speaking, everyone had already entered the central region of the central state. The distance between them had already shrunk, and they had already met many other cultivators. Moreover, the things that Chu Xiu had done in the Central Plains during this period of time had also caused his reputation to soar. Regardless of fame or notoriety, he was still very famous. Wei Shuya should have appeared after such a long time, but no one had seen Wei Shuya, which made Chu Xiu feel gloomy. Although Wei Shuya's strength could not be considered to be weak, half-step martial immortals were not rare in the Middle Province. Most importantly, it was still those monstrous ghosts. For existences like the ghost generals, if a cultivator that was not proficient in primordial spirit's secret techniques were to take care of them, even a martial immortal would find it very difficult to defeat them. Lu Fengxian consoled him from the side, "Brother Chu, don't worry. Old Man Wei is experienced and ruthless. Even if something unexpected happens, he should be able to pull through." Lu Jianghu also said, "That's right. That old man doesn't look like someone that will die young." Mei Qinglian glared fiercely at Lu Jianghu. "Does he know how to speak?" Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Let's not think too much about it for now. Let's pay attention to Old Man Wei's movements." As they were in the Central Plains, even if they wanted to find Wei Shuya, they would not be able to. Thus, regardless of whether they were anxious or if they were to search for Wei Shuya like a headless fly, it would be useless. Furthermore, it would only delay them. Although Chu Xiu was also very worried for Wei Shuya, he was still able to maintain absolute rationality. "In that case, where are we going now?" Lu Jianghu asked. Chu Xiu took a glance at Fa Ming, who was behind him, and said, "I am currently working together with the Heavenly Net Buddha to take care of the Sanskrit Church. Since you guys are here, my chances of winning have increased by a few points." When they heard Chu Xiu say that he had actually joined forces with the monks of the Heavenly Net Buddha, Lu Jianghu and the others' eyes widened in disbelief. They believed whatever Chu Xiu said, but now Chu Xiu actually said that he had joined forces with the Heavenly Net Buddha. Why did it feel like a cat and a mouse playing house? However, when they arrived at the Heavenly Net Buddha's encampment, they actually believed what Chu Xiu had said was actually true. Moreover, the monks of the Heavenly Net Buddha actually had a good impression of Chu Xiu. After all, it was Chu Xiu who had helped them out of their predicament and helped them kill many of the Sanskrit Church's warriors. For the monks of the Heavenly Net Buddha, as long as they could help them kill those heretics, they would be friends and allies. Chu Xiu called Fajing over and said in a low voice, "Master Fajing, the Sanskrit Church should have already discovered our actions. The Sanskrit Church's people died one after another at my hands. As long as they aren't idiots, they should have noticed something was wrong. When I went to rescue my men, Master Fajing was also present and was seen by many people. Once someone spreads the news, I believe that the Sanskrit Church will soon find out what we've done. Therefore, there's no point in trying to bait us now. We've already reached the point where the dagger is revealed. But I don't know if the Heavenly Net Buddha is prepared and determined to fight it out with the Sanskrit Church." Fajing pointed to himself and the other disciples of the Heavenly Net Buddha. "All the disciples of the Heavenly Net Buddha are prepared. From the moment we entered the Central Plains, the Heavenly Net Buddha and the Sanskrit Church have been sworn enemies. You've seen it for yourself, the Sanskrit sect has prepared a secret technique to deal with the Heavenly Treasure Temple. From the beginning, the Sanskrit Church had no intention of letting us participate in the Exalted Divine Palace's competition. Naturally, we stand on the same side now." Fajing was from the Life Transformation Pavilion, which was the strongest pavilion in the Heavenly Net Buddha Temple. They were usually the ones who charged at the forefront. That was why the warriors of the Life Transformation Pavilion all had a murderous aura around them, but Fa Jing did not. However, there was a cold aura around his body, and the aura that he inadvertently exuded was enough to send chills down one's spine. The monk's killing intent had been aroused, and it was directed at the Sanskrit Church. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes. "That's good. Actually, I feel the same way. Xianxia wants to kill me, and the Sanskrit Church wants to kill me, so I'll kill them first." The two of them didn't exude any killing intent either, but their chilling auras had already begun to spread uncontrollably. At this point, there was no need for any plans or schemes. Once the Sanskrit Church showed up, the two sides would inevitably engage in a bloody battle. There was only one sect in the western regions that was qualified to participate in the Exalted Divine Palace's ranking competition. Inside the Sanskrit Church's stronghold, Xianxia received the information the other Sanskrit cultivators had gathered. The power of laws around him actually showed signs of restlessness. When he read the information, he was so angry that he couldn't control the martial immortal power he'd just obtained after his breakthrough. Chu Xiu. Xianxia spat out through clenched teeth. He'd never imagined that his plan against the heavenly net Buddha would fail because of a guy like Chu Xiu, who had nothing to do with the Sanskrit church. Unexpectedly, the other party was standing together with the monk from the Heavenly Net Temple. When Xiaochen thought of all the cultivators who had died in the past few days, it was clear that Chu Xiu was the culprit. Chu Xiu and Tianluo Baosha were fishing, and the Sanskrit sect was the fish. The Sanskrit martial artist who reported the news had a worried look on his face as he said, "Palace Master, Chu Xiu is not an easy person to deal with, and his subordinates are not weak either. They are the cream of the crop among the martial artists of the same rank. They even fought with Gu Zun's successor and the people of the World Sword sect before, and even though they were outnumbered, they did not lose. Now that they have joined hands with the Heavenly Luo Treasure Temple, how are we going to deal with them?" Xianxia pondered for a moment and suddenly said, "You said that Chu Xiu's subordinates were fighting with Gu Zun's successor and the people of the World Sword sect. What's going on?" The warrior said, "I don't know the specifics. I only heard some rumors, so I didn't write it in the intelligence report. It is said that Chu Xiu once had a grudge with Yuan Fu, and later on, Yuan Fu joined forces with Su Jiang and Chen Jiulong to kill Chu Xiu. However, Yuan Fu was killed by Chu Xiu, and the other two were seriously injured. As for the people of the World Sword sect, they have a good relationship with the people of the World Sword sect, so the people of the World Sword sect only took action after knowing about Yuan Fu's death. However, Chu Xiu's strength is indeed terrifying. Even Yan Zhifei of the World Sword sect couldn't take him down." Hearing this, Xianxia suddenly smiled. If the Heavenly Net Buddha takes the initiative to join forces with Chu Xiu, they will definitely make a bad move, and they will be courting death. If Chu Xiu takes the initiative to join forces with the Heavenly Net Buddha, he will definitely be tricking the Heavenly Net Buddha. The funny thing is that the monks of the Heavenly Net Buddha are still complacent, thinking that they have found reinforcements, but they don't know that they have found trouble. The cultivator looked at Xianxia with a puzzled look, not knowing what he meant. With Chu Xiu's strength, he would definitely be a strong reinforcement. How did he become trouble? Xianxia sneered and explained, "Chu Xiu is a troublesome person to begin with. You can see how many people he has offended recently. Gu Zun's successor, the World Sword sect, the sects of the Southern Territory. Not counting these, he has even offended some of the rogue cultivators and cultivators from small sects who entered this place. Previously, he occupied the area between the periphery of the Central Territory and the hinterland, and openly robbed the cultivators who came and went. His attitude was very high profile, but it made people hate him to the bone. Now that he has offended so many people, and yet he is tied to the Heavenly Net Buddha, what do you think these people will think?" Hearing Xianxia's words, the warrior's eyes immediately lit up and he finally reacted. He only knew that Chu Xiu was strong, and with his help, the Heavenly Net Buddha had found a strong ally. But he had forgotten that the strong ally that the Heavenly Net Buddha had found was an existence that attracted a lot of hatred, and was trouble in itself. Xianxia stood up and waved his hand. Zhuo Bufan of the War God sect and War Spirit Hall of the Southern region are here, as are the 13 famous sword peaks of the World Sword sects, Yan Zhifei, and the unfathomable 9 Nether Sword Peak Master, Iguaxia. Su Jiang and Chen Jiulong may be fledgling among Gu Zun's descendants, but the disciples of Heavenly Venerate Yuan Yang's lineage deliberately came out of the mountains for the exalted divine palace. He is also related to Su Jiang and Chen Jiulong. And among the people that Chu Xiu robbed before, which one of them doesn't hate Chu Xiu? Since the monks of Tianluo Bao sect had chosen Chu Xiu to be their ally, didn't they always talk about karma and whatnot? Then today, I'll see whether Chu Xiu's Heaven Net Treasure Buddhist temple can withstand the karma on him. Chapter 1268. On the summit of a tall mountain in the hinterland of Central Province, this was the tallest mountain in the region. The people of the Empyrean Temple and Chu Xiu's subordinates were gathered here, waiting. They were waiting for the Sanskrit sect. After fighting for so long, the Sanskrit sect and the Empyrean Temple had come to a tacit understanding. Both sides had used all their means and killed nearly 10 cultivators from the other side. Now was the time for the final showdown. After this battle, only the final victor would be able to participate in the Exalted Divine Palace contest. Although the Exalted Divine Palace contest had 6 spots, the Empyrean Temple didn't want to give the remaining spots to the Dao sect, the southern region, or the eastern region. Many cultivators had gathered at the foot of the mountain to watch. Outside of Central Province, it was rare to see the Empyrean Temple and the Sanskrit sect fight to the death. Although the Empyrean Temple and the Sanskrit sect had clashed frequently over the years, those had been small-scale. Fighting on such a grand scale was rare. This kind of scene was rare, so even if they wasted a day to snatch tokens and soul crystals, it was worth it. Fajing and Chu Xiu stood on the summit at the same time. One dressed in white, the other in black, one bald, one with long hair, one with closed eyes and one with cold eyes. It was a very symmetrical and harmonious scene. Master Fajing. Chu Xiu looked ahead. I've always had a question. Why are the Sanskrit sect and the Empyrean Temple fighting so fiercely? Fajing was taken aback, as if he hadn't expected Chu Xiu to ask such a question. The Brahma sect and the heavenly net treasure Buddha had fought all the way from the lower realm to the Daoist heaven, and neither side would rest until the other was dead. This seemed to be common knowledge, so he had never thought that someone would ask them why they were fighting. After a pause, Fajing said in a low voice, "There is no right or wrong in the struggle between orthodoxies. There can only be one voice for the Buddhist orthodoxies. I firmly believe that the Zen sect is the most outstanding, and the Sanskrit sect thinks so too. Therefore, only one of us can stand until the end." Chu Xiu looked at Fajing with some surprise. He didn't expect Fajing to be so straightforward without any concealment. Chu Xiu nodded in understanding and said, "It seems that the battle between the two sects in the western region can also be summed up in one sentence, and that is, whoever has the bigger fist has the final say." Although Chu Xiu's summary was correct, Fajing still felt a little awkward. The Heaven Luo Treasure Temple was a sacred land of the Buddhist sect. Other than showing off their fists to the Brahmin sect, they would also treat others with kindness. Fajing frowned slightly and explained, "Almsgiver Chu, you can understand it that way," but, before Fajing could finish speaking, a powerful fluctuation came from afar. The rule force lingered in the air, stirring the surrounding heaven and earth essence chi. The heaven and earth essence chi in central state was pure and non-elemental essence chi, but under the stirring of the rule force, it bloomed with spots of golden sunlight. Xian Jialua was here. A group of Brahmin sect monks dressed in slightly strange attire gradually climbed the mountain peak, each of their auras blooming to the extreme. Compared to the monks of the Heaven Luo Treasure Temple, the auras of these Brahmin sect monks might be a little disorderly, but every kind of power was blooming. Amidst the chaos, there was a strange kind of balance. Fajing said with a hint of disgust, "The so-called 3 supreme Buddhas worshipped by the Brahmin sect have thousands of incarnations, but in the end, they can't even recognize themselves. How can such a chaotic existence dare to say that they are Buddhas? They are all mixed up but not refined." Xian Jialua's voice came coldly. "Mixed up but not refined? There are thousands of paths, but they all lead to the same destination. Even though the 3 gods of the Brahmin sect have thousands of incarnations, every incarnation can reach the ultimate, returning to the origin." At this time, Xian Jialua looked at Chu Xiu again, a hint of coldness in his eyes. "Chu Xiu, I didn't expect that before I could find you, you would actually go with the monks of the Heaven Luo Treasure Temple." "I killed Mariha," Chu Xiu suddenly said. Xian Jialua subconsciously wanted to speak, but his expression suddenly changed. "What did you say?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, I said, I killed Moriha. Isn't this the answer you have been looking for? I also obtained his illusion technique. Not to mention, it is really useful. Although this guy's strength is not strong, his attainments in illusion technique may not even be comparable to a martial immortal. As for the corpse, it seems that I randomly found a place to bury it. Wherever the grass is more vigorous, it should be buried there. Chu Xiu. You're courting death. Xianxia's eyes were filled with rage. It was not only because Chu Xiu killed Moriha, but also because Chu Xiu dared to say it in front of him. One must know that he had investigated this matter for a long time, and even went to the blissful demon palace, bearing a great deal of karma. Actually, at this moment, all he wanted was to capture Chu Xiu, force him to tell the truth, and enjoy that pleasure. In fact, he had more or less guessed Moriha's whereabouts. The truth was not important, but the process was important. So, at this time, Chu Xiu actually directly told the truth. Xianxia was furious not because Moriha was killed, but because Chu Xiu had ruined the process of him enjoying that pleasure. Chu Xiu said indifferently, many people have said that. Unfortunately, I, Chu Xiu, have been courting death for so long, but I have yet to find it. Why don't I trouble Palace Master Xianxia? Oh no, I should be Hall Master Xianxia now, to help me find it. The onlookers at the foot of the mountain looked at Chu Xiu with a hint of surprise. Some of them were even a little impressed. After all, in the Daoist, there were not many who dared to speak to the Sanskrit sect like this. Most of them knew that Chu Xiu was the successor of a prime sovereign and that he was the prefectural governor of the Imperial Sky Pavilion. Unfortunately, this identity was nothing in the eyes of the Sanskrit sect. The entire Imperial Sky Pavilion combined was no match for a hall of the Sanskrit sect, and the Sanskrit sect did not care about a mere martial immortal. In the eyes of the Sanskrit sect, the so-called prime sovereigns were no different from itinerant cultivators. At most, they were slightly stronger itinerant cultivators. Although the Sanskrit sect was considered a branch of the Buddhist sect, in reality, they were much more ruthless than the precious Buddha of Sky. They had never had so many concerns. Xianxia did not continue to be angry. Instead, he turned to Fajing with a faint smile on his face. Fajing, I knew that the people of the precious Buddha of Sky would not be easy to kill, but I didn't expect that you would choose to work with Chu Xiu in the end. This is not the style of the precious Buddha of Sky. Fajing's eyes were still closed as he said indifferently, why can't I work with Benefactor Chu? We, the precious Buddha of Sky, are willing to work with you to kill the heretics of the Sanskrit sect. The Buddhist Dharma is vast and boundless. It's not that it can't tolerate people, but it can't tolerate heretics like you. A strange smile appeared on Xianxia's face. Is that so? But do you know who the person you're tolerating is? Do you know how much karma he bears? He, Chu Xiu, has committed all sorts of crimes and slaughtered countless people. He has already sowed countless karma in the Daoist Empire. Do you know that? At this point, Xianxia suddenly shouted, everyone, please show yourselves. Today is a battle to settle karma. Not only will it settle the karma between my Sanskrit sect and the Sky Net Treasure Buddha, but it will also settle the karma between you and Chu Xiu. As Xianxia's voice fell, several more people soared into the sky from the foot of the mountain and landed on the mountain peak. The expressions of the crowd changed abruptly when they saw those people, and they began discussing among themselves. One of them wore ancient bronze armor. His exposed arms were covered in strange crimson tattoos. He was the Hall of War Spirits Hall Master, Zhuobufan, a half-step martial immortal. Another person held a black long sword. His black robe fluttered in the wind, and the aura he emitted was extremely pure demonic aura. Beside him were Yen Jifei and the other disciples of the World's Sword sect. Most importantly, the aura he emitted was similar to that of a martial immortal, yet not one. It was somewhat unfathomable. That person was Wuxia, the peak master of the 9 nether sword peak from the world's sword sect. In any case, there were already rumors in the outside world that Wuxia had already stepped into the half-step martial immortal realm several years ago. At that moment, even if he was already a martial immortal, no one would be surprised. On the other side, there were only 3 people. However, their auras were extraordinary too. The person leading them wore dazzling golden clothes and a scarlet sun crown. His appearance was masculine and handsome, and he also possessed the strength of a half-step martial immortal. He was Ouyangsheng, a disciple of the primal young heavenly exalted Gu Zun. He had already shaken the Jianghu over a dozen years ago. To ordinary martial artists, the primal exalts were mysterious and powerful. However, in reality, there were also differences in strength among the 9 heavens of martial immortals. Divine General Zhenlong and Venerable Gu Yu's lineage were considered ordinary, while the Galaxy Unfettered Cultivator's lineage was recognized as one of the strongest among the primal exalts. The primal young heavenly exalted Gu Zun's lineage was the same. In fact, Ouyangsheng had already stepped out of the Jianghu to train more than a dozen years ago. His performance was extremely outstanding, and his name shook the Jianghu. He could directly inherit the orthodoxy of the primal young heavenly exalted Gu Zun's lineage. However, for some reason, he had also come to the Daoist Divine Palace's opening this time around. Su Jiang and Chen Jiulong stood behind him. The 3 lineages had a good relationship with each other. It was obvious that he had come for the 2 of them today. Apart from them, there were quite a few rogue cultivators and people from small sects who had also come here. Of course, their reason for coming here was even more sufficient. It was because they were all people who had been robbed by Chu Xiu. At this moment, seeing that everyone was about to besiege Chu Xiu, it would be strange if they didn't strike while he was down. Seeing so many people from the Sanskrit sect appear in the blink of an eye, the expressions of all the monks from the Deva temple, except for Fajing, changed. Xian Jialua sneered. Monk Fajing, didn't you just say that Buddhism is boundless and can accommodate people? Would you be able to tolerate these people? Can you help Chu Xiu? Chapter 1269. The moment these people appeared, the monks of the Heaven Net Treasure Temple were a little confused. They were the ones who looked for Chu Xiu for help. Why were there so many enemies now? Fa Jing's face was expressionless. He just let out a long breath and said, "Almsgiver Chu, I need an explanation." Chu Xiu said indifferently, "What's there to explain? I, Chu Xiu, am open and aboveboard. I have a clear conscience. Why did the War God sect have enmity with me? It's because the southern region covets my eastern region territory. My existence is a threat to them. Why did the World Sword sect come to find trouble with me? Not only because they covet the eastern region territory, but also because I killed the successor of Gu Zun, Sword Venerable Ling Tian's Yuanfu, who had a good relationship with the World Sword sect. I don't have much enmity with that Yuanfu, but he wanted to kill me. In this kind of situation, do I still have to convince him with virtue? And that Chen Jiulong and Su Jiang failed to kill me when they teamed up with Yuanfu. Now, they even found a backer to find trouble with me. What else is there to say? As for the others, it's only because I snatched their token. But where is this? This is the central state. Fighting for the token itself is the rule. I only snatch the token and don't harm people's lives. Which martial artist in the entire central state dares to say that they can do better than me? If people don't offend me, I won't offend them. I wonder if Master Fa Jing is satisfied with this explanation. Of course, if Master Fa Jing feels that I, Chu Xiu, am a burden to the Heaven Net Treasure Temple, then fine, I'll leave. I'll settle this karma myself. Chu Xiu's words were said with awe-inspiring righteousness. It was even as if he had suffered great grievances and misunderstandings. But Lu Jianghe, who was standing behind him, almost couldn't hold it in until Mei Qinglian poked him. He forced himself to put on a serious expression. Previously, he had been wondering why Chu Xiu had joined forces with the Heavenly Treasure Temple. Now, he finally understood that Chu Xiu was not joining forces with them. He was simply looking for a scapegoat. In fact, Lu Jianghe had wronged Chu Xiu. Chu Xiu had joined forces with the Treasure Temple of Heavenly Luo only to get rid of the Sanskrit sect. As for using the Treasure Temple of Heavenly Luo as a scapegoat, it was just an unexpected gain. Fa Jing let out a long sigh and said, "Everyone, I, the Heavenly Net Treasure Temple, am unable to determine who is right and who is wrong regarding the enmity between you and Benefactor Chu, nor do I have the qualifications to determine who is right and who is wrong. But today, the Heavenly Luo Treasure Temple has teamed up with Benefactor Chu to deal with the Sanskrit sect, and it has nothing to do with your grudges. After we deal with the Sanskrit sect and leave the Middle Continent, if you want to settle your grudges with Benefactor Chu, the Heavenly Luo Temple will not interfere. What do you think?" Although Chu Xiu had righteously said that he would not be a burden to the Treasure Temple of Heavenly Luo, could they really push Chu Xiu out today? If they did so, their reputation in the pugilistic world would be tarnished, and this kind of thing would seriously affect the reputation of the Treasure Temple of Heavenly Luo. Back then, they had rushed to join forces, but now that they realized that the situation was not right, they tore up the agreement. The Treasure Temple of Heavenly Luo valued its reputation, and it could not afford to lose this face. Guixia of the Under Heaven Sword sect shook his head and said in an emotionless voice, "Today is a good opportunity. With the help of the Sanskrit sect, we can save a lot of effort. Master Fa Jing, please don't blame us. The Under Heaven Sword sect has always been straightforward. Regardless of whether it is a conspiracy or not, regardless of whether he is hitting us when we are down, why should we use 30% of our strength when we can solve it?" Zhuo Bufan of the Battle God sect took a step forward, causing the entire mountain peak to rumble. "Master Fa Jing, you are taking things too hard. The Treasure Temple of Heavenly Luo is the leader of the Zen sect, so why do you have to join forces with people like Chu Xiu? Are you really going to ignore everything to deal with the Sanskrit sect?" Ouyang Sheng of the Celestial Master Yuan Yang's bloodline was silent. He did not speak, but there was a hint of arrogance in his eyes. It was not arrogance, but a kind of arrogance that came from his bones. In his opinion, he did not need to explain, even if he was facing the Treasure Temple of Heavenly Luo. A cold smile appeared on Xian Jialuo's face. The Treasure Temple of Heavenly Luo thought that they could defeat him by joining forces with Chu Xiu, but in fact, they were finding trouble for him, big trouble. At this time, on a small mountain peak in the distance, Fang Yizhen, who had fought with Chu Xiu before, was sitting there with his legs crossed. He squinted his eyes and relied on his powerful perception to clearly observe the confrontation over there. He was holding a chicken leg in his hand and taking a bite from it from time to time, as if he was watching a show. But in the central state, there were no other living things except demonic ghosts, and no one knew where he got the chicken leg in his hand from. At this time, there was a flash of light beside him, and suddenly, two people appeared. One was handsome and delicate, and his Dao accumulation was natural. It was Yinlingzi of the Spiritual Treasure Temple. The other was a young man wearing a Daoist robe. He was masculine and handsome, and his aura was like a mountain, incomparably calm. This person was known as the first of the new generation of the Daoyuoshan Dao sect, Su Guishan. He was the direct disciple of the three pristine temples Dao master, and had mastered the 3,000 arts of Dao sect. Seeing the two appear, Fang Yizhen was not surprised at all. He just said, "Senior brother Su, you are late. They are about to fight over there. And fellow Daoist Yinlingzi, long time no see. How was your harvest? By the way, do you want a chicken leg? Greetings, fellow Daoist Fang." Yinlingzi waved his hand and politely declined Fang Yizhen's chicken leg. Fang Yizhen shook her head and said, "No wonder you don't like other food. Your Spirit Treasure Temple's martial Uncle Lin's cooking skills are really good. The last time I ate his phoenix spreading wings, I almost couldn't eat meat for a year. Su Guishan said in a deep voice, "All right, stop studying your chicken leg. How is the battle going?" Fang Yizhen took a bite of the chicken leg and said, "The Brahma sect and the Heavenly Treasure Temple have been scheming against each other. Now they are ready to reveal the dagger." The Sky Luo treasure Buddhist had found Chu Xiu from the eastern region as a helper. However, Chu Xiu had also stirred up trouble and attracted many enemies. Now, it all depended on the Sky Luo treasure Buddhist's choice. But I have fought with Chu Xiu before. He is not simple. Yin Lingzi also nodded and said, "I've come in contact with Brother Chu a few times. He's indeed not simple. Every time I meet him, his strength will increase by a large margin. It's always a pleasant surprise." Fang Yizhen narrowed his eyes and said, "If that is the case, then it should be a shock." Su Guishan said, "No need to look. The Heavenly Treasure Temple has no choice. No matter how much karma Chu Xiu attracts, the Heavenly Treasure Temple will accept it." Why? Because the Heavenly Treasure Temple still cares about its reputation. It can be defeated, but it can't lose face. It is the same for the Three Pristines Temple. Fang Yizhen spat out the chicken bone in his mouth and concluded, "Face is a pain." As soon as they finished speaking, Fajing let out a long sigh and said, "Since benefactors are unwilling to retreat, then I, the Sky Luo Treasure Temple, can only offend all of you. After all, we have an alliance with almsgiver Chu. Unless the pure land of ultimate bliss collapses and the spirited mountain falls, the Heavenly Treasure Temple will not go back on its word." As Fa Jing's voice fell, his tightly closed eyes suddenly opened. However, he did not reveal his pupils. What appeared in front of everyone was a dazzling pure lotus Buddha light. In that instant, the might that Fa Jing revealed was extremely powerful. Although he was only a first heaven martial immortal, the aura he revealed was comparable to Tao Qianming of the Great Thousand sect of the southern region. A cultivator from the Heavenly Treasure Temple, even if he had just stepped into the martial immortal realm, was not someone ordinary people could compare to. Xian Jialuo's eyes also revealed a serious expression. The light of the sun behind him became more and more dazzling. He had not actually fought against Fa Jing before. Within the Heavenly Treasure Temple, the Life Transformation Pavilion was the strongest. The pure lotus Buddhist light was the bane of the Sanskrit sect's cultivation techniques. So, the one who often fought against the Life Transformation Pavilion was the strongest, Shiva Temple. However, he had heard of Fa Jing's name. He was the next successor of the Life Transformation Pavilion. He had already refined the pure lotus Buddhist light into his eyes. When he closed his eyes, all evil would retreat when he opened them. It was extremely terrifying. At that moment, Chu Xiu suddenly said to Fa Jing, "Grandmaster Fa Jing, help me block Zhuo Bufan and the others. I will deal with Xian Jialua. Xian Jialua is a martial immortal. Give me a reason." Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "So what if he is a martial immortal? It's not like I haven't killed one before. Zhuo Bufan and the others are mainly here for me. They can kill me, but if Grandmaster Fa Jing attacks, they won't. Grandmaster Fa Jing, you can delay them for a longer time. As long as I can kill Xian Jialua, they will naturally retreat when they see that there is no chance to hit them when they are down. But Grandmaster Fa Jing, it will be a bit of a waste for you to face Xian Jialua. Although the pure lotus Buddhist light of the Life Transformation Pavilion can restrain the Sanskrit sect's cultivation techniques, they are all evil and strange. Although Xian Jialua's solar divine palace cultivation method is derived from the Sanskrit cultivation method, it's more violent and violent. It doesn't have much of an evil or sinister feel to it, so the pure lotus Buddhist light doesn't have much effect on it. Fa Jing's eyes flickered with the pure lotus Buddhist light. After hesitating for 3 breaths, he said in a deep voice, "Are you really confident that you can kill a martial immortal?" "If I am not confident, I will not seek death." Fa Jing nodded slightly. The next moment, his figure moved and went straight for Zhuo Bufan and the others. Seeing Fa Jing block in front of them, Zhuo Bufan and the others were slightly stunned, but they did not resist. To them, they just wanted to take this opportunity to get rid of Chu Xiu. In reality, none of them had any deep hatred for Chu Xiu. They fought the martial god sect because of the interests of the two territories. Other than the interests of the two territories, the World Sword sect also owed swordsman Ling Tian a favor. As for Ouyang Sheng, he came purely because of a favor. Therefore, they would only hit him when he was down and would not specifically find trouble with Chu Xiu. It was not worth it to fight him to the death. Therefore, at this time, since Chu Xiu wanted to fight Xianxia to the death, if Chu Xiu died at Xianxia's hands, this was exactly what they wanted to see. Chapter 1270. When Xianxia saw Fa Jing going to intercept Zhuo Bufan and the others, leaving him to Chu Xiu, he couldn't help but reveal a look of anger. This made him feel humiliated. What did Fa Jing mean by this? Did he think he was not worthy to fight him? At that moment, Fa Jing had already started fighting with Zhuo Bufan and the others. Zhuo Bufan's physical strength was shockingly strong, like a demon. Every punch he threw had the power to shatter mountains and break rivers. Ouyang Sheng was even more powerful. His scorching pure yang energy seemed to be able to ignite the void. His cultivation was only a hair's breadth away from the martial immortal realm. It was unknown why he didn't make a breakthrough in the central province. The strongest was Wuxia from the World Sword sect. His strength was no different from a real martial immortal. When the sword in his hand slashed down, it stirred the power of rules. But for some reason, his realm was not that of a martial immortal. Each of the three had the strength to fight against a first heaven martial immortal. If they had joined forces, their power would have been even more shocking than it was now if they had the intention to fight Fa Jing to the death. Chu Xiu said to Xianxia, Hall Master Xian, stop looking. Your opponent is me. Chu Xiu, you're courting death. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and said, You've said this many times today. But only in the end will we know who is truly courting death. As Chu Xiu's voice fell, he suddenly shouted, Old Lu, use the blood demon transformation technique. City Master Shang, use the power of withering to help me increase my strength. Qinglian, ignite the fire in your heart. Brother Lu, lend me a hand. His words sounded a little unclear to the bystanders, but Lu Fengxian and the others understood what Chu Xiu meant. Lu Jiang he cursed as he used the blood demon transformation technique. A powerful power of blood instantly surged into Chu Xiu's body. He realized that although he had only used the blood demon transformation art to escape, every time he risked his life, it was definitely because of Chu Xiu. With Chu Xiu's current attainments in the blood demon divine art, he could easily control powers of the same origin. Boundless blood-red light was absorbed into Chu Xiu's body. He formed hand seals, and a terrifying devil shadow appeared in front of him. It was formless and intangible, but it had a myriad of transformations. Creation Heavenly Demon. At the same time, Lu Fengxian also used the Nine Heavens Fiend Golden Body. A huge demonic figure appeared behind him. His power exploded and merged with the heavenly demon creation. Both Chu Xiu and Lu Fengxian had cultivated the Nine Heavens Fiend Golden Body. This kind of power also belonged to the same origin, so Chu Xiu could naturally absorb it. As the shadow of the heavenly demon creation grew larger, Shang Tianliang's withering glory domain bloomed. The heavenly demon creation, which had merged with the power of the three people, began to burn violently. Its power suddenly exploded and shot into the sky. In the end, Mei Qinglian made a hand seal and the power of the karmic fire of the red lotus burst out, fusing with the pitch-black heavenly demon of fortune. A red lotus was imprinted on the pitch-black demon, as if it had been given a real soul. The heavenly demon creation roared angrily at the sky, its demonic might piercing the horizon. This series of actions seemed slow, but in reality, the four of them and Chu Xiu attacked at almost the same time. In the blink of an eye, they had completed their actions. Chu Xiu, Shang Tianliang, and the others had fought their way to the Daoist world from the lower realm. Chu Xiu, Lu Jianghu, and Lu Fengxian had even cultivated the same martial path. Naturally, they understood each other very well. Moreover, when Chu Xiu was not in seclusion, he would also exchange martial arts with them. It was not just a simple teaching, but a genuine exchange. The degree of tacit understanding between them was naturally not something that ordinary people could compare with. When the heavenly demon creation, which was formed by the combined power of the five people, appeared, Xianxia was indeed a little shocked. In fact, secret techniques for joint attacks were not new to the Daoist world. Every large sect had such techniques. Previously, Su Jiang and Chen Jiulong had even joined forces to use their divine powers. This was very normal. However, the power of these five people was completely different. Yet, they were able to combine together without any rejection. This was truly rare. But then, Xianxia sneered and said, "The power of 5 pieces of scrap metal that have yet to reach the martial immortal realm is still too weak to withstand a single blow." Fang Yizhen, who was watching from afar, said with interest, "How creative. You can actually use such a move. Our Dao school has so many secret techniques that belong to the same sect. Why don't you give it a try?" Su Guishan said in a deep voice, "The most important thing in combining power is not the secret technique, but the person. Only by trusting each other can the power be gathered together." After saying that, Su Guishan looked at Fang Yizhen and said, "Apart from the divine powers, I also know the techniques of the 3 pure palace. Theoretically speaking, our powers can also be combined. But, do you trust me?" Fang Yizhen took a bite of the chicken leg and laughed awkwardly. "Senior brother, your habit of always talking until the end is not good." Su Guishan did not reply. He simply looked at the battlefield expressionlessly. On the battlefield, facing Xianxia's evaluation of him as scrap metal, Chu Xiu did not say anything. He simply closed his eyes. In the next instant, demonic aura surged around the heavenly demon creation. Faintly, Chu Xiu's appearance appeared, as if he was a real person. However, what made Xianxia feel uneasy was that he actually felt a trace of true intent from the demonic figure that looked like Chu Xiu. It was a very strange feeling. It was clearly something condensed from power, something similar to a Dharma idol. Yet, he could clearly feel the aura of a real person. Xianxia did not know what that meant. Although he kept saying that Chu Xiu was courting death, he knew that it was impossible for him to truly be courting death. However, he also knew that it was impossible for Chu Xiu to truly be courting death. Since Chu Xiu dared to attack him, he most definitely possessed a trump card. At the very least, it was a trump card capable of injuring a martial immortal. Attack! Following Xianxia's shout, the Sanskrit warriors under his command also madly rushed out and began to fight with the monks of the heavenly Luo treasure temple. At the same time, Xianxia's hands formed a seal. In an instant, a dazzling sun appeared around him. A strange four-armed Buddha condensed in the sun's light. Behind it, 1,000 giant snakes coiled around it. It was magnificent and dazzling. Previously, Xianxia was the palace master of the Solar Divine Palace. The martial arts he cultivated were also from the Solar Divine Palace. After Xianxia took over the Vishnu temple, he naturally went to cultivate the secret techniques of the Vishnu temple. The sun god was one of the incarnations of Vishnu. Although the attributes of the two were different, they were existences from the same source. Among the Sanskrit's 3 gods, Brahma was in charge of creation, Shiva was in charge of destruction, and Vishnu was in charge of balance. Between life and death, there was a wonderful balance. Vishnu's Dharma idol held up the sun. The hot light could bring light and life, but it could also burn the earth and bring endless destruction. That was the power of the Vishnu temple. It was neither life nor death. Instead, it controlled the balance between life and death. There was no sun in the central province. However, with the appearance of Xianxialuo's Dharma idol, the surrounding power began to unceasingly condense. It affected the power of rules and forcibly created a sun in the central province. It looked incomparably magnificent. The true strength of the martial immortal realm was not in pure power, but the power to control rules. Just as everyone was marveling at Mariha's strength, Chu Xiu's side also made a move. In the hands of the sky devil Dharma idol, a demonic blade was created from the demonic energy. The instant the blade slashed down, the endless demonic energy covered the void. In the next instant, the demonic energy was torn apart, revealing a dazzling moon. There was no sun in the central province, and there was no moon. But today, they were in the same place, and they saw the sun and the moon exist at the same time. Especially when the shadow of the moon appeared, whether it was Fajing or Yi Guixia, Zhuobufan, Ouyang Sheng and the others who were fighting with him, they all felt their hearts palpitate. They couldn't help but slow down the intensity of their fight and look at Chu Xiu. Divine power. That was the power of divine power. They were all from the great sects. Furthermore, they were well-known figures among martial artists of the same level. In the future, they were practically existences that were guaranteed to become martial immortals. As such, they were not unfamiliar with divine abilities. However, although they were all divine powers, there were differences in strength. The power they felt from the shadow of the moon was very strong, so strong that it made them tremble. In an instant, the power condensed. The shadow of the moon fell, and it reflected Xianxialuo's figure. Only then did everyone see clearly that it was not a shadow of the moon. It was a blade light that was comparable to the brilliance of the moon. In the reflection of the moon, a powerful force descended from the sky and fell on Xianxialuo's body. He was shocked to find that the force was tearing his body apart, and he was powerless to resist. The Vishnu Dharma form holding the sun in its hand was cracking. No matter how dazzling the light of the sun was, it couldn't resist that power. Xianxialuo's body was also being torn apart. The light of the sun bloomed around him, but the power was invisible and intangible. Even if he exploded his power to the maximum, he could only delay the tearing of his body, but he couldn't stop it. With an angry roar, countless dazzling Sanskrit characters lit up around Xianxialuo. But in the next moment, traces of blood-colored patterns appeared all over his body. In the eyes of everyone present, his body seemed to have been sliced into pieces, directly disintegrating. At the same time, the fated heavenly demon form that Chu Xiu had condensed also began to crack bit by bit, just like Xianxialuo. Chu Xiu shouted, "Withdraw your power." Lu Fengxian and the others immediately withdrew their power as quickly as possible. However, the fated heavenly demon form was like a black hole, and it was still absorbing their power. Chu Xiu formed hand seals and spat out a mouthful of blood. Like a biting cold blade, the blood tore apart the connection between him and the fated heavenly demon form. In the next moment, the fated heavenly demon form and Xianxialuo's body shattered at the same time. Chapter 1271. The clouds parted and the moon shone brightly. This was the most powerful mystique that Chu Xiu had mastered so far, but it was also the mystique that he would use the least. Even in a desperate situation, Chu Xiu would rarely use it. This was because although the mystique had great destructive power, the backlash was not something that could be easily withstood. Therefore, Chu Xiu had to ensure that he could kill his enemies after using this mystique, and that he was in an absolutely safe environment before he could use it. It was actually not very wise to use the clear sky illuminating shadow in the central plains, because this place was filled with danger, and almost everyone could be an enemy. Therefore, this time, Chu Xiu did not use the clear sky illuminating shadow himself. Instead, he used all his power and gathered all the power of Lu Fengxian and the others, and used the power of the creation heavenly demon to create a clone of himself to use this mystique. The power of the creation heavenly demon was very mysterious. Even though Chu Xiu had mastered the demonic Tao of creation through the power of the demonic seed of creation, he still needed time to unearth its true usage. Creation, creation, creation. Creating power into a person was also one of the uses of the demonic Tao of creation. This was just an idea that Chu Xiu had after obtaining the demonic Tao of creation. He did not expect it to actually work. Using the creation heavenly demon that he had formed as a substitute to use the clear sky illuminating shadow, the backlash would naturally fall on the creation heavenly demon. Apart from consuming a lot of his own power, Chu Xiu would not suffer from the backlash. Of course, this method was a trick. Now that Chu Xiu's power had greatly improved, the power of the clear sky illuminating shadow should have been even stronger. However, in reality, the power was not as strong as when he had fought against Yan Beifeng. Of course, Xian Jialuo's power was also inferior to Yan Beifeng's. Even though Yan Beifeng had been severely injured, he was still inferior. Even so, he had lasted longer under the clear sky illuminating shadow than Yan Beifeng. In fact, if he had lasted a while longer, the first one to give up might have been Chu Xiu. After all, maintaining the existence of the creation heavenly demon required great power. At this moment, everyone below was silent, as if time had been frozen. No one had expected the battle between Chu Xiu and Xian Jialuo to end like this. Xingalo's fame in the Daoist was not small, he was the new lord of Vishnu Palace, he was considered a big shot anywhere. The commotion that Chu Xiu had caused in the eastern and southern regions was in no way inferior to Xian Jialuo's. In fact, the number of cultivators that had been plundered and defeated by him in the central plains was uncountable. Just by looking at the number of people who were looking for trouble with Chu Xiu, one could tell how much hatred he had incurred. Thus, when the two of them fought, although a portion of the people felt that martial immortals would not be easy to defeat, there were still a portion of the people that felt that the two of them would definitely engage in a fierce battle. But now? Xian Jialuo had only used half a move to be killed, and Chu Xiu had only used one move. This was simply incomparably shocking. Thus, at this moment, everyone looked at Chu Xiu with astonishment, especially Zhuo Bufan and the others. It was precisely because they understood magical powers that they knew how terrifying they were. The magical power that Chu Xiu had mastered was simply an existence that surpassed their understanding. Not to mention its power, how could they defend against it? On a distant mountain peak, Fang Yizhen was so shocked that even the chicken leg in his hand fell to the ground. He had fought with Chu Xiu before, so he had naturally felt Chu Xiu's strength. However, he did not think that he was weaker than Chu Xiu. In that battle, Chu Xiu had not used his full strength, and neither had he. But now, after seeing Chu Xiu's clear sky reflecting shadow, Fang Yizhen began to doubt his own strength. If it were him, would he really be able to block this attack? Instant kill a martial immortal. What a powerful magical power. After a long while, Fang Yizhen let out a long breath. However, at this time, Su Guishan suddenly said, "It is indeed powerful, but it is not an instant kill. Don't underestimate Xian Jialuo, and even more so, don't underestimate the Sanskrit. The heavenly Luo Buddha's Zen heritage is very strong, but the Sanskrit was able to fight it for so long, so it is not weak either." Xian Jialuo was able to become the temple master of one of the three temples of the Sanskrit. Even if he had just taken over the position, he still could not be treated as an ordinary person. Chu Xiu's magical power can cause irreparable damage to the body. It cannot be blocked, and can only be blocked with the strength of the body. But don't forget that some martial artists are still extremely terrifying even without a physical body. Fang Yizhen was slightly stunned. The next moment, on the battlefield, a dot of golden light suddenly bloomed. Where Xian Jialuo had been torn apart by the clear sky reflecting shadow, the dot of golden light constantly expanded, and finally turned into Xianxia's appearance. However, this time, he had 2 faces and 4 arms, impressively in the form of Vishnu. You destroyed my body. Chu Xiu, I'll definitely make you suffer a fate worse than death. The golden primordial spirit of Vishnu gave off a very holy appearance, but at this moment, Xianxia's expression was incomparably ferocious. Chu Xiu sighed. He knew it would be like this. There is no martial technique in this world that is perfect, not even magical powers. If you think it is because he is perfect, it is because you have not yet discovered his weakness. The clear sky reflecting shadow was indeed powerful, but when Chu Xiu killed Yan Beifeng, he had already discovered where its weakness was. It did not cause enough damage to the primordial spirit. Whether it was in the lower realm or in the Daoist world, primordial spirit secret techniques were rare. Usually, when the body was destroyed, the primordial spirit would also dissipate. But although it was rare, there were people who cultivated primordial spirit secret techniques. When the body was destroyed, the primordial spirit could still protect the primordial spirit and continue to exist. Previously, Xianxia did not show any signs that he knew primordial spirit secret techniques, but now it seemed that not only did he know primordial spirit secret techniques, he had clearly cultivated this secret technique to an extremely high level, and could even use the power of the primordial spirit to form a shape. Resplendent light condensed from the power of the primordial spirit appeared behind Xianxia, and his eyes were filled with murderous intent. It was true that he knew primordial spirit secret techniques, but this did not mean that his body was not important to him. If his body was destroyed, even if he returned to the Sanskrit sect to rebuild it, all these years of cultivation would be in vain. Even if he could break through again in this lifetime, it was unknown whether he could ever break through again. But since Chu Xiu had destroyed his body, he would also make Chu Xiu pay the price. Although Chu Xiu's divine ability was extremely shocking, he could feel that it had almost exhausted all of Chu Xiu's power. Right now, how could Chu Xiu still fight back? However, at this moment, Chu Xiu looked at Xianxia with a strange expression. Xianxia, you keep saying that I'm courting death, but in reality, you're the one who's really courting death. Let me teach you a lesson. Next time, if you're lucky enough to survive, run for your life first, then think about revenge. If you insist on jumping out and saying something fierce, then you're really courting death. Oh, that's right, you probably won't have this chance. Before Xianxia could react, Chu Xiu suddenly waved his right hand. On his wrist, a golden bracelet engraved with Sanskrit began to spin rapidly, emitting a shocking golden primordial spirit light. Using the power of the creation sky demon just now had only consumed Chu Xiu's power, but not his primordial spirit. What was the most effective thing against pure primordial spirit power? It wasn't Mariha's illusion technique, but the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet that he had just obtained. Ever since he had obtained this item, Chu Xiu had not used it. However, he knew that the power of this item was absolutely shocking, because it was something that had almost caused him to fail miserably. The 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet spun rapidly, and the aura it emitted made everyone's primordial spirit feel like it was being pulled. If Xianxia had been in his normal state, he might not have been pulled in so easily. However, his physical body had been destroyed, and only his primordial spirit was left, so he was easily pulled into the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet. When the rest of the Sanskrit sect warriors saw this scene, they frantically tried to stop it. Previously, Chu Xiu's clear sky reflecting shadow was too sudden, and they had no time to react at all, allowing Chu Xiu's blade to destroy Xianxia's physical body. This time, they couldn't just watch as something happened to Xianxia. However, the people of Heavenly Luo Treasure Temple were not idiots. When they saw this scene, they all took action and blocked in front of them. Xianxia's primordial spirit let out a silent roar, but it was useless. The power of the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet was too great. In an instant, Xianxialuo's front was already a vast expanse of whiteness, and he was completely dragged in. The 6 paths of reincarnation continued to spin, and in the next moment, Xianxialuo found himself like a stray dog on the street. He was randomly bullied, kicked, and beaten. He had to fight with other stray dogs for food, and the result was that he was covered in cuts and bruises. Animal Path. Chu Xiu. You deserve to die. Xianxialuo had been standing at the peak of the same level ever since he showed his talent in the Sanskrit sect. He was in charge of the Solar Divine Palace, which was the strongest palace in the entire Vishnu temple. Now, he was in charge of the Vishnu temple. Although he was the weakest temple master among the 3 temples, he was also the youngest temple master. So, Xianxialuo's heart could be said to be extremely arrogant. But now, Chu Xiu had thrown him into the animal path. In Xianxialuo's eyes, that was simply a humiliation to him. But in the next moment, he felt all sorts of emotions transmitted from the heart of the stray dog. They were incomparably real, incomparably oppressive, and made his state of mind incomparably manic. In that instant, Xianxialuo's complexion suddenly changed. As an expert in the martial immortal realm, Xianxialuo's state of mind was not low. Along the way, he could be said to have experienced many things. Because of that, he understood how terrifying the feeling of extreme realism was. A person's memory was only so long. It was fine for you to experience 1 or 2 reincarnations, but what about 8 or 10 times? More and more memories would invade your mind, invade your state of mind. Under the reincarnation, sooner or later, you would lose yourself. Temple Master Xian, you can't take it anymore? If you don't want to be a stray dog, that's fine. I'll change it to something more enjoyable. Following Chu Xiu's words, the 6 paths of reincarnation, celestial path, hell path, hungry ghost path, Asura path, and finally, human path. Chapter 1272. The 6 Paths of Reincarnation bracelet had basically completely replicated the abilities of the high-level demon ghost from the Samsara temple. The only difference was that the demon ghost could drag people into the Samsara temple. Without breaking the 6 paths of reincarnation, even martial immortals couldn't get out. On the other hand, Chu Xiu needed to first use the power of his own spirit to activate the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet and pull the other party inside. Although this could be considered a flaw, there was an advantage to having a person wield the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet. That was, Chu Xiu knew which reincarnation state was the most lethal to a cultivator's yuan shen. Reincarnation after reincarnation seemed ordinary, but the humiliation and unwillingness was constantly imprinted in Xianxialuo's memory. It constantly impacted his state of mind. At the same time, Chu Xiu's spirit was constantly being consumed like water. This caused Chu Xiu's expression to change slightly. Chu Xiu hadn't tested the power of this thing before, but now it seemed that the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet wasn't perfect. Chu Xiu wasn't a demon ghost, so in order to activate it, he needed to use the power of his own spirit to support the lifelike illusion in the reincarnation cycle. Therefore, every time Xianxialuo reincarnated in the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet, Chu Xiu had to consume a layer of the power of his spirit. With the power of Chu Xiu's spirit, he could last about 50 reincarnations. Therefore, if Xianxialuo could last 50 reincarnations, Chu Xiu would have no choice but to stop. However, it was clear that Xianxialuo's state of mind wasn't that strong. After experiencing about 10 reincarnations, Xianxialuo's state of mind had completely fallen into a muddled state. He had forgotten who he was. Chu Xiu had an epiphany in the 6 paths of reincarnation and realized that, I am who I am. No matter how many reincarnations he went through, no matter what his identity was, he was Chu Xiu, and he could only be Chu Xiu. However, Xianxialuo clearly didn't have this kind of awareness. He was completely lost in it. A dozen or so reincarnations seemed very long, but to the outside world, it was only an instant. When the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet lit up again, Xianxialua's Yuan spirit was thrown out of the 6 paths of reincarnation. The Yuan spirit's light was extremely dim, as if it would be extinguished in the next second. Chu Xiu directly grabbed Xianxialua's soul, while the other Sanskrit warriors roared, "Chu Xiu! How dare you!" Smiling coldly at them, Chu Xiu's primordial spirit glowed in his hand and crushed Xianxialua's primordial spirit to pieces. His primordial spirit dissipated and his true spirit exploded. Just like that, a martial immortal level expert died before the crowd. In fact, most people thought that Xianxialua's death was inexplicable and very sullen. In fact, that was indeed the case. Ever since Xianxialua had stepped into the martial immortal realm, he had not fought against anyone. This was his first battle. Yet, the result was that he was killed by Chu Xiu in 2 attacks. The clear sky illuminating shadow slashed at the physical body, it was impossible to defend against. The 6 paths of reincarnation injured the Yuan spirit. It was unavoidable. After 2 attacks, a martial immortal from the Sanskrit sect didn't even have a chance to fight back. It sent chills down everyone's spine. Even their ally, the Sky Luo Temple, couldn't react in time. Fa Jing let out a long sigh and said to Wuxia and the others, "Everyone, do you still want to fight? Since Benefactor Chu has joined forces with the Sky Luo Temple and helped us kill Xianxialua, we can't just sit back and watch you hit him when he's down. If you want to settle your grudges, wait until we leave the Central Plains. The Sky Luo Temple will not interfere." Wuxia and the others looked at each other and retreated almost at the same time. Chu Xiu's strength had somewhat exceeded their expectations. Now that Xianxialua was dead and the Sky Luo Temple was wholeheartedly protecting Chu Xiu, it was meaningless for them to persist. Of course, most importantly, they were somewhat frightened by Chu Xiu. That was a martial immortal. A martial immortal who stood at the peak of the Daoist continent had been killed by Chu Xiu in 2 moves. They couldn't accept it no matter what. "Grandmaster Fa Jing, the rest is up to you." Chu Xiu's face was pale as he sat cross-legged on the ground and began to recover his aura. His strength and Yuan spirit were basically all depleted. Even Lu Jianghu and the others were in the same state and had no more strength to fight. Of course, the Sky Luo Temple didn't need them anymore. With Xianxialua's death, the entire Sanskrit sect was without a leader and was already starting to panic. As Wuxia and the others left the battlefield, Fa Jing, the martial immortal, had time. His pure lotus Buddha light shone and was almost unstoppable. The Sanskrit sect side was completely routed. The fierce battle lasted for a long time before it ended. Nearly half of the Sanskrit sect side was killed and the rest fled in panic. Although they didn't completely wipe out the Sanskrit sect's warriors, they had killed enough people this time. The Sanskrit sect's foundation was there for all to see. Regardless of whether the warriors who came in were palace masters or not, they all had some skills. After all, Fa Jing was just one person. Apart from those who were targeted by Fa Jing, who would definitely die, the others also used secret techniques to escape. Fa Jing walked in front of Chu Xiu and closed his eyes again. He bowed to Chu Xiu and said, "This time, it was thanks to Almsgiver Chu that the Sky Luo Temple was able to deal a heavy blow to the Sanskrit sect. Almsgiver Chu killed Xianxialua, so you have the greatest merit. The token and soul crystals we obtained this time will be equally divided with Almsgiver Chu. I wonder if Almsgiver Chu has any objections?" Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "Let's do as Great Master Fa Jing says. I said before that anyone who cooperates with me, Chu Xiu, will not be disappointed. I hope that in the future, I will have the opportunity to join forces with the Sky Luo Temple." This time, Chu Xiu had helped the Sky Luo Temple kill Xianxialua. This could be said to be something that no one in the Sky Luo Temple had been able to do in the past 100 years. After all, Xianxia was now a palace master. If he had been in the western region, when it was his turn to fight, the Sanskrit sect and the Sky Luo Temple would have been at the peak of their battle. The entire Sanskrit sect would have mobilized countless experts, so it would not have been easy to kill Xianxia. Only in a place like the Central Plains, where everyone's strength was similar and there was no outside help, could Xianxia be killed. Therefore, at this time, the warriors of the Sky Luo Temple had a good impression of Chu Xiu and did not feel repulsed by him like before. After all, strength was the best way to talk. However, Fa Jing looked at Chu Xiu with a profound look in his eyes. He chuckled and said, "If there is a chance, that would be for the best. I only hope that Benefactor Chu can be sincere when the time comes." Others might not have noticed, but Fa Jing felt that Chu Xiu had other plans when he decided to join forces with the Sky Luo Temple. After Wuxia and the others made their move, Chu Xiu had been too calm. Although the two sides had only been in contact for a few days, Fa Jing could feel that Chu Xiu's intentions were not shallow. Could it be that he had not noticed that he had offended so many forces? Therefore, when Wuxia and the others appeared, he did not panic. After all, he had most likely expected such a situation. Joining forces with the Sky Luo Temple to attack the Brahmin sect was one step, but at the same time, he wanted to lure Wuxia and the others out and use the power of the Sky Luo Temple to attack. This was probably another step. However, this was only Fa Jing's guess. He did not have any proof. Furthermore, Chu Xiu had killed Xianxia, so he naturally could not say anything bad about him. However, in his heart, he had already raised a trace of vigilance against Chu Xiu. However, Chu Xiu did not care. It was enough to join forces with this group of monks this time. He did not know what would happen the next time they met. After recovering his strength and obtaining the token and soul crystals, Chu Xiu prepared to bid farewell to the people of the Sky Luo Temple. The crisis of the Brahmin sect had been resolved, so there was no need for the two sides to join forces. Although the two sides would not be considered enemies for the rest of the journey, it was still a little inappropriate to travel together at this time. However, before leaving, Fa Jing suddenly said, "Almsgiver Chu, that bracelet of yours that can pull the other party's spirit into it, why does it look like an item of the Sky Luo Temple?" Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Great Master Fa Jing has a good eye. This thing is the secret treasure of the Sky Luo Temple in the past. 10,000 years ago, the ancestor of my lineage exchanged martial arts with the seniors of the Sky Luo Temple. Although the 6 Paths of Reincarnation bracelet used to belong to the Sky Luo Temple, this was not its original function. It only gained this special ability after transforming into a demonic ghost, so Chu Xiu was not afraid that Fa Jing would recognize it." Hearing Chu Xiu say this, Fa Jing just nodded slightly and did not ask much. Although there were many secret treasures of the Sky Luo Temple, none of them had been lost in the past few hundred years, and none of them were similar to Chu Xiu's 6 Paths of Reincarnation bracelet. Looking at the backs of Chu Xiu and the others as they left, Fa Ming could not help but say, "In this trip to the Central Plains, we were lucky to meet Almsgiver Chu. Otherwise, it would have been terrible. This is really a matter of luck." Fa Jing's face showed a trace of an unfathomable smile. "Luck? Junior brother, don't believe in things like luck. Luck will not come to you by itself. Chu Xiu is also not an easy person to deal with. Except for the brothers of the Sky Luo Temple, it is best to leave some leeway for outsiders in the future." Fa Ming touched his bald head, feeling a little puzzled. What does senior brother mean? This time, they clearly cooperated very well with Almsgiver Chu and the others. At this time, on Chu Xiu's side, Shang Tianliang looked back and said, "Monk Fa Jing is a little suspicious of you." Chu Xiu said indifferently, "So what? I wasn't the one who suggested joining hands, they were the ones who suggested it." Besides, they didn't lose anything by dealing with the Sanskrit sect, did they? Without me, the Sky Luo Temple would have been eliminated by the Sanskrit sect. Although they wouldn't have lost too many people, they would have lost the qualification to compete for the exalted divine palace. Now that we have collected enough tokens and soul crystals, we can directly enter the central plains and wait for the time to come at the exalted divine palace. With the tokens and soul crystals of the Sanskrit sect, as well as those collected by Lu Fengxian and the others, Chu Xiu now had more than 500 tokens and more than 400 kilograms of soul crystals. With this amount, not to mention the top 6, he could even secure a spot in the top 3. Therefore, Chu Xiu could just sit back and watch the final competition in front of the exalted divine palace, provided that no one provoked him. Chapter 1273. Outside the central region of the exalted divine palace, Chu Xiu, Lu Fengxian, and the others showed a hint of doubt in their eyes. This was different from what Zhong Qiushui had described. According to Zhong Qiushui, everyone would gather in front of the exalted divine palace in the last 10 days. After a series of battles, they would wait for the palace to open. But what about the exalted divine palace now? What appeared in front of Chu Xiu and the others was actually a stretch of fog, a deep and serene fog that devoured their senses. They could not see what was inside at all. This was a scene that Zhong Qiushui had not mentioned to them before. Moreover, because the distance between them had shrunk, there were other cultivators not far away from Chu Xiu and the others. They were also hesitating in front of the fog, not knowing what was going on. Clearly, this was the first time they had encountered such a scene. Is this a demonic ghost? Chu Xiu tried to release a strand of astral energy, but it immediately disappeared as soon as it entered the fog, cutting off their connection. Shang Tianliang frowned. If this thing is a demonic ghost, how large is the area it covers? It has directly enveloped the entire exalted divine palace. A demonic ghost of this level is probably something only a peak 9th heavens martial immortal could handle, right? They had all encountered high-level demonic ghosts before. Apart from the ghost general that could move freely, the other 2 demonic ghosts didn't cover too large an area, only the size of a village and a temple. If a demonic ghost could cover the entire exalted divine palace, how terrifying would it be? Don't go in yet. Let's circle around the exalted divine palace and see if Elder Wei is here. It was already the final moments of the Central Plains contest, so everyone should have gathered here. However, Chu Xiu and the others circled around the exalted divine palace and saw many cultivators, but they still didn't see Wei Shuya. This made Chu Xiu's heart skip a beat as he had a bad feeling. At the side, Mei Qinglian said, "Don't worry. When old Wei was young, he had survived even more dangerous situations. In the Battle of the 9 Heavens Mountain, there was no chance of survival, but old Wei still survived. It will be the same this time." Lu Fengxian also said, "I also believe that Elder Wei will be fine. My intuition is quite accurate." Lu Fengxian's words were somewhat comforting to Chu Xiu. His intuition was really accurate. However, if he had known that this would happen, he would have asked Master Yuanji to perform a divination before he came here. At this time, a voice suddenly came from behind Chu Xiu. "Brother Chu, you're all here. Why don't I see Brother Lu?" Chu Xiu turned around and saw Yin Lingzi. He had come with Fang Yizhen and Su Guishan of the 3 Pure Palace. Brother Lu has no intention of participating in the final battle for the exalted divine palace, so he should be cultivating in a safe place. Chu Xiu cupped his hands in greeting to Fang Yizhen. "Brother Fang, we meet again." Yin Lingzi was surprised. "Senior Brother Fang, you two know each other?" Fang Yizhen chuckled. "No discord, no concord. I still have to thank Brother Chu for not killing me." Fang Yizhen pointed to Su Guishan. "This is Senior Brother Su Guishan, the direct disciple of our 3 pristine temples Tao Master. Chu Xiu and the others subconsciously raised their eyebrows when they heard this word. The title of the Tao Master's personal disciple, no matter where it was exceptionally dazzling. To put it bluntly, even if you brought a dog over and said that it was the Tao Master's personal disciple, people would still think that it was the Howling Sky Divine Hound. The Daoist didn't have the Dragon and Tiger Storm sovereign list like the lower realms, so no one could say for sure who the strongest Daoist expert was. But the publicly acknowledged strongest experts were only a few, such as the Heavenly Treasure Temple's World Sovereign, the 3 Pristine Temples Tao Master, and the Sanskrit Sect Master. Among these people, the one most likely to be the strongest Daoist expert was the Tao Master. Su Guishan nodded at Chu Xiu and the others, but didn't say anything else. Fang Yizhen said apologetically, "Please don't take it to heart, my senior brother has always been like this." Su Guishan wasn't arrogant. Rather, he was indifferent. He was extremely indifferent towards most things. Chu Xiu had only surprised him slightly when he had attacked Xian Jialua. "That's right, Brother Fang, do you know what's going on with this fog?" Fang Yizhen scratched his head. "Before we came, the ancestral master said that there would be some changes in the struggle for the exalted divine palace. You can say it's good or bad, but it's different from usual. How you choose and how you deal with it will be up to you." Su Guishan said indifferently, "The exalted divine palace is opening about 20 to 30 years ahead of schedule. That already explains a lot. It's just that those monster ghosts have stirred up some trouble again. The exalted divine palace is right at the center. If they can't even pass through this fog, they naturally don't have the qualifications to enter. That's good too. With this layer of fog, we can filter out quite a few people trying to pass through." After saying this, Su Guishan stepped into the fog without the slightest hesitation. Fang Yizhen shrugged, seemingly helpless about Su Guishan's personality, but he still stepped into the fog. Lu Jianghu rubbed his chin. "Who is this guy trying to pass off as? This bunch of cow noses speak so strangely. It's like their eyes are growing on top of their heads." Only after saying this did Lu Jianghu realize that Yinlingzi was also present. He hurriedly said, "Little Daoist Yinlingzi, please don't take offense. I wasn't talking about you." Yinlingzi smiled. "It's fine. This little Daoist's nose isn't that big, so of course I won't take it personally." "Daoist Yinlingzi, are you not going to enter?" Chu Xiu asked. Yinlingzi shook his head. "The final struggle for the exalted divine palace has no place for this little Daoist. There's no point in forcing my way in. I've already seen the central plains and can't enter the exalted divine palace, so why take the risk? There's no point in forcing things that you can't get." Yinlingzi's personality was in line with the Daoist doctrine of peace and inaction. He didn't fight for things, and he didn't force things. Perhaps in the eyes of others, if you don't fight for something in the Jianghu, you will definitely be at a disadvantage. But for Yinlingzi, even if he didn't fight for something, no one would be able to take it away from him. Chu Xiu looked at Lu Fengxian and the others. "What about you? Are you going to enter?" Mei Qinglian shook her head. "I've already stepped into the profound understanding realm. There's no point in entering. I can't possibly become a martial immortal in one go, right?" LV Fengxian also said, "I'll also wait here. If Old Wei doesn't come over from behind, we can also provide support here." Shang Tianliang nodded. "I'll guard here with these 2 kids. Experts with the strength of half-step martial immortals and martial immortals will definitely choose to enter the mist. I will guard here. If anyone dares to cause trouble, I will be able to deal with them." After everyone entered the fog, Shang Tianliang, a half-step martial immortal level existence, was practically undefeatable. With Shang Tianliang there to protect Chu Xiu, no matter how many people Chu Xiu had offended, he would not have to worry about anyone coming to cause trouble for him. Lu Jiang he thought for a moment. Then, he said, "If you all guard here, I'll go with Chu Xiu. That way, we can look after each other. He didn't have any thoughts about the exalted divine palace. Furthermore, with his strength, although he wouldn't die easily, it was unknown whether Chu Xiu would look after him or he would look after Chu Xiu after entering the mist. That said, he was still brooding over what Su Guishan had said about people passing off fish eyes as pearls. He was the grand demon exalted blood sea. Why would he need to pass off fish eyes as pearls? While they were chatting, many cultivators had already entered the mist. For example, the two half-step martial immortals from the sword sect, Yan Jifei and Yi Guixia, as well as exalted primal Yang's faction, Ouyang Sheng and the others, all entered without hesitation. The exalted divine palace only opened once every several decades. They had already come this far. If they still chose to shrink back, it would be a joke. Chu Xiu and Lu Jiang he didn't waste any time either. They directly stepped into the mist. However, when they stepped into the mist, the scene that appeared before them astonished them. It surpassed their imaginations. What appeared before Chu Xiu and Lu Jiang he was a towering city. The city walls were several hundred meters tall, and they were all built with black stones. Moreover, the sky and earth here were extremely dark. It was completely different from the misty feeling of the outside world. There was an oppressive feeling, as if black clouds were pressing down on the city. Chu Xiu looked behind him. There was no mist behind them. Instead, there was only endless darkness. He could sense it with his perception, but he couldn't find the end. It seems that Su Guishan was right. This place was probably created by a demonic ghost. Lu Jiang he couldn't help but exclaim in shock, a demonic ghost can create such a large domain? What level is this demonic ghost at? Although Lu Jianghe had killed quite a number of demonic ghosts, the area covered by those demonic ghosts was extremely small. Even the illusions of some low-level demonic ghosts were very crude, and he could easily see through them. However, he couldn't see the end of the city. Just how powerful were these demonic ghosts? When Chu Xiu and Lu Jiang he arrived at the city gates, they discovered that there were actually people guarding the city gates. Moreover, there were two malicious ghosts guarding the city gates. They had green faces and sharp fangs. They had 2 horns on their heads, and their lower bodies were like those of a spider with 8 legs. They looked extremely evil. Seeing Chu Xiu and Lu Jiang he walk over, the 2 malicious ghosts guarding the gate said, "If you want to enter the city of the wronged, you'll have to pay for your life first." Seeing these 2 things, Lu Jiang he subconsciously wanted to attack, but he was stopped by Chu Xiu. "Look at what's hanging on the city walls." Lu Jiang he looked up and saw a head hanging on the city walls. Moreover, this head was somewhat familiar. It was one of the 2 rogue cultivators who had besieged them with Su Jiang. Although the other side wasn't too strong, he was still a peak heaven and earth profound opening realm existence. Chapter 1274. Although high-level demonic ghosts are terrifying, they are not invincible. At the peak of heaven and earth profound understanding, even if they cannot win, they can still escape. Just like Gui Jiang from before, although he can fight against a martial immortal, Su Jiang and Chen Jiulong can still escape using a secret technique. Before, Lu Jiang he did not put the evil ghosts guarding the city in his eyes. How strong can 2 little demonic ghosts guarding the city be? But after seeing the human head, he did not say anything. This human head, is it real? Lu Jiang he asked cautiously. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "What do you think? Don't say that you can't sense the blood and qi fluctuations in the human head. Even if it is fake, to be able to hide from your eyes and even your natural sense of blood and qi, how can a demonic ghost of this level be weak?" Chu Xiu walked over and asked, "How much does it cost to buy the passage?" One of the evil spirits took out a dirty small basin and said fiercely, "2 people need 4 caddies and 4 tails of blood." Chu Xiu said to Lu Jiang he, "Let them bleed." Lu Jiang, he said with dissatisfaction, why should I bleed? You cultivate the blood demon divine art, do you still lack this bit of blood? You also know the blood demon divine art. When we enter this city of wrongful death later, if we encounter any danger, will we rely on you or me? Of course, I have to maintain my peak state, not a single drop of blood can be shed in vain. Lu Jiang now he suddenly regretted following Chu Xiu into this city. Although it is true that he cultivates the blood demon divine art, he did not bleed in vain. However, although Lu Jiang is a bit unwilling, he still obediently ran to bleed. After all, what Chu Xiu said is very reasonable, he is unable to refute. After letting out the blood, the two evil ghosts opened the city gate and let Chu Xiu and the others in. Inside the ghost town, not a sound could be heard. All the streets were neat and tidy, and so were the houses. It was so neat that it made people feel strange, because every house was exactly the same. Even the decorations at the entrance were the same, as if they had been copied. At this moment, a strange sound suddenly came from the street. Someone was playing a flute, but the sound was extremely strange. It was like the howling of ghosts from the 9 serenities of hell. Chu Xiu pulled Lu Jiang along, pushed open a door, and entered a room to hide. Apart from a few tables and chairs, the room was completely empty. The only thing that caught everyone's attention was a shrine in the center of the room. However, the shrine didn't contain a statue of a god. Instead, it contained a soul crystal. A soul crystal the size of a fist. Lu Jiang raised his eyebrows and said, could it be that in this city of tragic deaths, every house has a soul crystal? This city is so big. If we search every house, we can find a lot of soul crystals. It's a big profit. Chu Xiu stared at the soul crystal for a long time, and suddenly said, this soul crystal is alive. Lu Jiang trembled fiercely, alive. What do you mean? Chu Xiu squinted his eyes and said, it's literally what it means. Focus your mind and carefully sense the soul crystal. Do you see anything? Lu Jiang did as Chu Xiu said. Sure enough, in the deepest part of the soul crystal, there was a figure, but from the clothes, it didn't look like a modern martial artist. What is this thing? A demonic ghost? Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, actually, I've always had a question, and that is whether or not demonic ghosts will die. Previously, Zhong Qiushui said that because of the distortion of the rules of power in the central province, demonic ghosts were formed. Martial artists' primordial spirits won't dissipate here, but what about demonic ghosts? We killed demonic ghosts, and demonic ghosts turned into soul crystals, but are they really dead? Is it the primordial spirit that perished, or the soul that dissipated? But one of the rules of this place is that the primordial spirit is immortal, so how can the soul dissipate? Lu Jiang suddenly thought of something, and his body shook violently. You mean, the demonic ghosts in the central province can't die at all? Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, at least according to my guess, demonic ghosts can't die. Even if we kill them, they will continue to gather power and be reborn. The soul crystal is only the source of their power, their outer shell. If we take their outer shell, will they gather power again? Just like the soul crystals worshipped in the shrines. The power in the city of tragic deaths is even stronger than in the central province, and it slowly seeps into the soul crystals. Who knows when, they will once again become demonic ghosts. Lu Jiang couldn't help but ask, just what are those Daoist fellows up to? The exalted divine palace has existed for 10,000 years, and I don't believe they don't know this. Demonic ghosts can't die, and if we kill one batch, there will be another batch, and in the end, more and more will appear. Are they trying to turn the entire Daoist population into a ghost horde? Chu Xiu said indifferently, even if the top Daoist experts don't get along with each other, they shouldn't act recklessly in this sort of matter. Are they just going to watch as something happens to the Daoist people? They clearly have their reasons for not doing so. It's not that they don't want to, but that they can't. As the two of them spoke, the strange sounds outside grew louder and louder. The city of tragic deaths shielded their senses, so Chu Xiu and Lu Jianghe could only look out through the crack in the door. On the long street, a group of people was slowly making their way over. There were no people in the group, only demonic ghosts. However, these ghosts looked a little strange, very much like the ghost generals Chu Xiu had encountered before. They all wore the same armor, and their bodies were hidden from view. Only a layer of black mist could be seen coiling around the armor. There were also several strange existences around these ghost soldiers. They looked like humans, but they were tall and thin, almost abnormally tall. They were at least 10 meters tall, and they wore mourning clothes and bamboo hats. In their hands, they held bone flutes and played the sinister tune from before. The leader of this group, the demonic ghost, was even stranger. It wore golden armor that was engraved with strange Sanskrit characters, and it even emitted a faint Buddhist light. This made Chu Xiu wonder if these demonic ghosts were from the Empyrean Temple or the Sanskrit sect when they were alive. Speaking of which, for some reason, it seemed that the demonic ghosts they turned into after their deaths were extremely powerful. Was it because the Buddhist martial artists were originally strong in tempering their minds, so after they turned into demonic ghosts, their strength also increased? While Chu Xiu was still wondering, he suddenly felt that something was wrong. He turned his head abruptly and saw that Lu Jianghe's eyes were blurred, and his body was constantly trembling as if he was immersed in some kind of illusion. Chu Xiu frowned, and the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet in his hand shone with a golden yuan-shen light. Like a great bell, it resounded in Lu Jianghe's mind, shaking him awake. Lu Jianghe suddenly coughed out blood, and his eyes regained clarity. What's going on? Did you fall into the demonic ghost's illusion? Lu Jianghe's eyes were still filled with horror, and he said, didn't you feel it? The sound in the bone flute directly brought me into the memories of these demonic ghosts. I was muddle-headed, and I was transformed into a demonic ghost by the distorted rules. Chu Xiu shook his head. He really didn't feel these things. Although the sound of the flute was evil, it was only evil, and it didn't affect Chu Xiu at all. Was it because his yuan-shen was stronger than Lu Jianghe's, or because he had refined the demonic ghost's soul crystal before, so he didn't feel the influence? Thinking of the matter of him refining the demonic ghost's soul crystal, Chu Xiu's face suddenly changed. It seemed that refining the soul crystal of a high-level demonic ghost would also attract the attention of a high-level demonic ghost. He subconsciously turned his head and looked at the crack of the door. At this moment, a scarlet eye suddenly appeared from the crack of the door, full of twisted malice. Found you. Chu Xiu directly slashed out with the broken formation in his hand, and the powerful saber light instantly shattered the house. He and Lu Jianghe also jumped out of the house as fast as they could. However, the next moment, the house that was destroyed by him began to strangely restore itself. It was not an illusion, but as if time was flowing backward, returning to its original appearance. The demonic ghost in golden Buddhist armor pointed at Chu Xiu and shouted in a low voice, "You killed my compatriots and broke into the city of the wronged. You deserve to die." As his voice fell, the golden-armored demonic ghost held a long staff carved with a ferocious ghost, and directly smashed it towards Chu Xiu's head. The other ghost soldiers also roared and rushed over, and the incomparably tall ghosts in shrouds played the bone flute in their hands. The sound was countless times louder than before. At this moment, Chu Xiu finally felt the influence. It was like a demonic sound piercing his ears, constantly attacking his mind, as if it wanted to pull his yuan-shen out. The divine domain bloomed, and yin and yang and the 5 elements reversed, constantly strangling the power of the golden-armored demonic ghost and the other ghost soldiers. However, as soon as he attacked, Chu Xiu found that the power of these demonic ghosts was actually real. Simply put, their current state was actually the same as the ghost general, not between real and fake, but with real physical power. Lu Jianghu had never encountered a ghost general, and he was surrounded by a group of ghost soldiers. He shouted, "What is this thing? Its power is real, and it has no flesh and blood. Is it a demonic ghost or not?" Originally, when facing the demonic ghosts that only had the power to invade one's mind, his blood devil power was still somewhat useful, at least he could distinguish between real and fake. However, facing this kind of demonic ghost without flesh and blood, but with real power, the effect of the blood devil power was instantly reduced to the minimum. Chu Xiao said in a low voice, "Fake and real, of course it is also a demonic ghost. The special high-level demonic ghost I encountered before looked like this. However, that demonic ghost became like that because of an accident, and the demonic ghosts here are definitely not normal. Then what should we do?" The formation-breaking sword in Chu Xiao's hand slashed out a biting cold light, ethereal and formless, directly shredding all the ghost soldiers in front of Lu Jianghu. What should we do? Of course, kill our way out. You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.